This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate fourth and final part of What If Naruto Became Kami Shinigami. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Carrying a kunai smeared with Hidan's blood, Naruto leapt back. As Naruto approached, the odd ninja attempted to stab him with a concealed kunai that he had taken out of his sleeve. The kunai was stopped and dragged away by Naruto's chain, which then dropped it into his waiting hand. This time, Hidan didn't even bother to dodge, and the winged boy pushed the kunai forward. Hidan made the decision to begin his ritual because he was sick of teasing. Whether a Jinchuriki or not, this heathen deserved to die. He staggered around as his blood spilled to the ground after the kunai entered just below his rib cage. The wound was causing unbearable pain. "Ow! That hurt, you shithead." With a scowl on his face, Hidan straightened back up. He only needed the heathen's blood now that he had finished his ceremonial circle. His hand tightened around the rope of his scythe, and he smiled as he met Naruto's gaze. "You can't kill me. Try all you want, but the fact is you're going to die today. I'll sacrifice your life to Sama and he will reward me greatly. Now die." As the scythe approached him from behind, Naruto heard the whistle and saw the rope tighten. It nicked his arm as it passed, despite his best efforts to avoid it. For a moment he rolled along the floor, then he stood up again to see Hidan smiling maniacally. Hidan gazed at the blood splatters on the blade of his scythe with unrestrained joy. The end of the heathens would undoubtedly result from this. His ritual was never survived. He shivered when he tasted the blood after licking it off the blade. Wonderful. As Hidan's skin turned black and white spots that resembled bones emerged, Naruto watched in horror. Hidan's laughter sent a shiver down Naruto's spine as his behavior grew more crazed and insane. The preparations are finally finished. Hidan stopped laughing and relaxed, and Naruto's eyes widened as he stared into the blonde's. "Heaven, you will experience a great, never-ending agony before you pass away. I'll take pleasure in your suffering and slowly kill you. Let me hear your scream now." Naruto grabbed his leg in the same spot as Hidan and let out a painful scream, but he bit back his own as he jammed his scythe into his leg. Ten heard Naruto scream and turned away from Kakuzu, who was clutching his leg and screaming in agony. Jiraiya yelled at her to wait as she started to run toward Naruto, but a hand suddenly grabbed her throat, and her eyes widened in horror as she saw Hidan laughing maniacally with his scythe in the same place on his body that Naruto was clutching. When Ten noticed that the hand was connected to Kakuzu, who was standing a few feet away, she hovered with her toes barely touching the ground. The white-eyed man blinked slowly as he threw her back to Jiraiya. "Girl, I wouldn't tamper with his ritual. When others get in his way, he becomes irritable. I don't need your heart because I'm after Jiraiya's head, but you don't have a bounty or an elemental affinity that would aid me. I guess the only thing you can do for me is to die." She cringed as Naruto screamed again and held Keppaku in front of her defensively. Ten coughed and rubbed her throat. As horrible as it was to say, Naruto was on his own for the time being. She and Jiraiya would have to get serious to defeat this guy. He wasn't like Tobi, distant and silly. Kakuzu was cold and calculating. "Just what do we do, Jiraiya? Sama?" With a quick glance around, Jiraiya assessed the situation and decided that they would need a plan. If Ten and Naruto weren't there, he would simply call forth a toad the size of the Hokage Tower and be done with it, but since Kakuzu wasn't normal, he doubted that would work either. "We don't yet know what he is capable of or what those masks do. While I try to get rid of him, stand back and wait for an opportunity. We will then assist Naruto. Keep an eye out for an opening." Ten couldn't agree, so Jiraiya jumped into battle and started fighting Kakuzu. The man's skin was like iron, but Jiraiya knew that this was the best kind of chakra manipulation, and he would just need to figure out a way to get through it, or give Ten a chance to use Keppaku on him. After coughing up blood and evaluating his predicament, Naruto realized that he was stuck with a psychopath who could curse people by connecting himself with them in such a way that any wound he sustained would reflect on his victim. The sick part was that he took pleasure in the suffering his victim endured. Grabbing his arm where Hidan had cut himself, Naruto grunted as the wound started to heal. Hidan, who genuinely enjoyed his victim's suffering, twirled his scythe and smiled malevolently. "I have never offered a more intriguing sacrifice to Sama than you. Your wounds heal nearly as quickly as mine do. How much longer can you endure before I just bleed you to death, I wonder?" Hidan impatiently tapped his scythe on the ground as Naruto grunted and pulled himself to his full height with his hands on his knees. Hadn't Itachi mentioned wings? Why, yes, he had. Please, stop being such a jerk. Before you pass away, we still have a long way to go. We heard from Itachi that you had wings. They're where? Are they taken advantage of? Hidan seemed to enjoy the sound of his own voice and was currently trying to talk his ear off, or provoke him into doing something foolish. At moments like these, Naruto wished he had Shikamaru with him. He could think quickly enough, but he needed a plan. He needed time to consider the situation. Naruto took a deep breath and quietly checked himself out, stalling for time. They didn't get ripped off, you psychotic, lunatic asswipe. The blonde gritted his teeth and glared at the slick-haired man as the wound hissed and started to close. Hidan responded by cutting the blades of the scythe down Naruto's right arm, causing him to scream once more. All right, let me show you my wings. When I do, we'll see what occurs. Hidan licked his blades once more in anticipation as he watched joyfully as the enormous wings came into being. He would not be able to taste the blood of angel wings again, if at all, and the Jinchuriki would have to live a little while longer. Heaven, show me what occurs. Approach me. Hidan's eyes widened as Naruto approached him and attempted to jam his scythe into his stomach, but Naruto slammed into him and they blew back into the forest through the trees. Naruto squatted down and flapped his wings before launching himself toward Hidan like he had been shot out of a cannon. He jumped back from the pile of trees that lay on top of Hidan and looked back to where they had been. The circle of blood was still there, so that was the key. As long as he kept the Akatsuki member out of that circle, he had a chance. The scythe that had been positioned to go into Hidan's stomach went into his chest, and Naruto gasped in shock and grabbed his chest before realizing he felt no pain. Hidan was furious because the damned heathen had thrown him out of his circle and would undoubtedly try to keep him from returning, so he would have to fight his way back. He fumbled for his scythe and discovered that the rope was moving away from him. He followed the line and discovered that Naruto's chain had his scythe in its grasp once more, which would make his task more challenging. Naruto stared at the scythe, unable to understand why it had 3 blades. It must have served a purpose, but he couldn't imagine it. It might have been a ceremonial blade, but he didn't have time to think about it. His chain held the line taut as he charged forward, hammering Hidan with punches and kicks. Hidan let out a cry of agony. The child's blows were excruciating. He was used to pain, but few people could withstand as many wounds as he had sustained from this recent sacrifice. He would definitely be deserving of Jashin. Sama. Hidan was knocked back hard against a tree, and blood spurted from his mouth. He fell to his knees and started laughing once more. It's too bad, youngster. You're tough. Before Jashin, Sama visited me in a dream and offered me his gifts. You made me think of myself. Without Kami's initial discovery of you, you would have been a fantastic Jashin follower. Still wary of the man who appeared to be hurt, Naruto squinted his eyes and moved cautiously forward. I never resembled you. I'm not like you. Furthermore, I will never be like you. To ensure that no one else suffers in the name of your god ever again, you are going to die today. I will make sure of it. In order to let Naruto know he was back in control, Hidan snorted and pulled hard on the rope, causing Naruto to jerk back on his chain and stumble when Hidan let go of his end of the rope and darted forward. Unable to regain his footing in time, Hidan ran past him and snatched up his scythe again, keeping his chain in place. He then dragged Naruto along until he was back in the circle and sank his blade into his leg once more. Doesn't it sound delicious? Your suffering is like sweet nectar to me, and my wound is your suffering. Blood ties us together. Both of us suffer as a result of this scythe. The only distinction is that Kami has given you nothing, but Jashin. Sama won't let me die. Join me in enjoying the suffering. Hidan's words sprang to mind as Naruto gripped his leg and gasped as another pain jolted through his arm. Bound by blood. Conduit. He had a wild idea. It could either make things worse or work to his advantage. Hidan stopped talking when Naruto started to laugh and stood up. Hidan, you wanted to find out whose god was superior. Alright, we'll find out immediately. Hidan chuckled and hefted his scythe once more, but he wasn't concerned about the enormous hammer that appeared when Naruto ran his hand over his arm. Heaven, I have no idea what you're hoping to achieve there. Anything you do to me will reflect on you while I'm in my social circle. As his chain attached to the hilt and raised the hammer above him, Naruto smiled. That's what I'm counting on. Jiraiya had tried everything he could think of, except smothering Kakuzu with Gomakin. Doden. Yomi Numa wouldn't work. The tall man's iron skin hurt like hell to punch, and it was a Doden manipulation. He would have to get 10-10 involved in this. Those masks allowed him to control different elements, so his Kaiden jutsus were out of the question. Not to mention that the tall man hardly had to move to attack because he could detach pieces of his body and move them at will. Jutsus took chakra, and Jiraiya had the ultimate foil to jutsus with him. He was nowhere near finished, but he had no idea how to approach this, so he jumped back beside the girl, huffing a little. 10-10. I need your attention. Keep a close eye on me, and try using Keppaku to cut that black stuff when he tries to stretch his arm again. Make sure she expels the chakra. As Tenten came from his right and Jiraiya from his left, Kakuzu's eyes narrowed as he threw aside his robe and the blackness exploded from his back, the masks taking on humanoid forms. Tenten nodded her head, understanding that chakra was the essence of life and that he had to use it if he was performing jutsus. Those masks must have taken up a lot of chakra, not to mention his iron skin. Jiraiya clenched his jaw and leapt away from the mask that was coming at him, throwing a Kaiden jutsu at him. He estimated that if they broke them, the jutsu would disintegrate. If Kakuzu took the hearts of the ninjas he had killed, then they were pieces of the masks. He only wished he knew more. He turned to see Tenten frantically avoiding her blob of blackness while swinging Keppaku at it. The Zanbatsu would absorb chakra from whatever it touched, and the blackness it touched would fall to the ground and slither back to Kakuzu. His eyes widened as the mask threw another Kaiden jutsu at him. The mask Tenten was fighting would only use Fudan jutsus, that was their secret. The ninjas' hearts allowed him to use their elemental alignment without any repercussions. If you killed the mask, the heart would lose its host and die. Kill them all, and the so-called immortal would also fall. When the mask cracked and fell to the ground in pieces, the humanoid blob stopped, and Jiraiya gulped down a breath of fresh air before yelling at Tenten. Jiraiya formed a Rasengan in his hand and waited for the mask to approach. It flew toward him and he thrust his hand forward, the Rasengan tearing through the mask. Tenten. Take off the mask. It's the origin. Before charging into the pitch black darkness, he saw the girl grit her teeth and clutch Keppaku like a baseball bat, her eyes glimmering with rage as she was cut and scratched, bringing the giant feather down full force onto the mask, shattering it into a million pieces, then letting Keppaku fall to her shoulder while she huffed and looked at Kakuzu, who was not amused. Nobody has been able to kill even one heart, much less two, in a long time. In exchange, I'll have to take both of yours. While Tenten aimed Keppaku at Kakuzu, Jiraiya prepared another Rasengan. First, we'll murder Immortal and those other two hearts. Then we're on our way to get you. Kakuzu's stitches started coming loose one by one, and he snorted. Come on over. In any case, those hearts were aging. Just as they were about to charge, a terrifying scream rang out through the air, and what worried Kakuzu and excited Jiraiya and Tenten was that it was Hidan, not Naruto. Hidan watched and smiled, certain that the Jinchuriki was ending his life to avoid more suffering, while Naruto gulped and prayed to Kami that his plan would succeed. He could have sworn he felt a feminine hand caress his cheek and accepted his fate as the hammer sped toward him, hitting his chest with a sickening thud and leaving him standing for a moment without feeling anything, before hearing the chilling scream. His grin widened maliciously when he heard the hammer's thud as it went home, but it vanished when he felt a sharp twist in his chest, and he looked curiously down at his chest to find 3 bloody holes lining his torso. Hidan watched smugly as the points on the hammer sped for the heathen's chest, and the weight of that thing, along with those spikes, would tear right through the boy and he would taste the delightful agony before the light went out of his eyes. Ah! It is painful. I'll murder you, you jerk. Your sins will not be pardoned by Jashin, Sama. What had happened? His ritual had never done this before. Hidan dropped his scythe, momentarily losing his position, and clutched at his chest, struggling for air. He patted the area where the hammer had been and smiled, realizing that he had been correct. The hammer was a holy hammer that only hurt the truly wicked, leaving the righteous and virtuous safe from its judgment. He strode to where Hidan was kneeling down and kicked the man's scythe away. Naruto was watching as the chain pulled the hammer back and it slid from his chest with a wettish-looking sound, the wounds healing even as the hammer left him. I assumed you were accustomed to suffering. I assumed you took great pleasure in it. However, I suppose that only applies when the pain isn't yours. You are such a whiner. Fuck you. Hidan yelled and grabbed his hand after Naruto scowled and the chain pushed one of the hammer spikes into his, creating a hole in it. Naruto then called forth 4 cage bunchins, each of whom grabbed a limb of Hidan's, keeping the man inside the circle. You murdered the peaceful monks who had done you no harm at that Kami temple. Hidan, I will now show you their suffering. I'll demonstrate the benefits of worshipping the god of death. Glaring at Naruto, Hidan spat on one of the clones and eyed the chain that hung behind the boy, the hammer at the hilt. Heathen. A heretic. Not a believer. This world will burn in the great cleansing when Jashin Sama pours hellfire upon it. I can't be killed. The great Jashin Sama is someone I worship. I am unbeatable because of the immortality he has granted me. Whispering into the white-haired man's ear, Naruto knelt beside him. When you need your god, Hidan, where is he now? Now my god is with me. Thank you, Kami, Sama. Hidan clenched his teeth as Naruto struck himself in the back with the hammer, starting the punishment, and his eyes widened as he thought he saw a woman standing behind Naruto, staring at him with sad but firm eyes. Kami. Sama deserves praise. Hidan, may she pardon you for your transgressions, for I will not. 10-10 had broken Sweden's mask just as Jiraiya had broken Raiden's, and both were almost unconscious from the battle. It was no wonder that Kakuzu was an S-class missing nin. He had an answer for every element, and fighting him was like fighting 5 people at once. Jiraiya was about to move forward when 10-10 extended her hand. Now, Jiraiya. Sama, let me finish him. The least I can do is this. Jiraiya looked at her anxiously, as though she might pass out at any second, but she still wanted to fight. Let me do it, 10-10. You appear on the verge of collapsing. I understand. I have a plan, so don't worry. Kakuzu had not heard from Hidan yet, and he had never anticipated that they would kill everyone but his heart. He would have to hunt for even better hearts after he killed them and took their hearts. Dumbass most likely became overconfident once more and lost his ass. I'd like to continue if it's okay with you. You know, money is time. Kakuzu was on her shoulder as 10-10 scoffed and moved forward. Yes, old man, yes. I hear you. Having only one heart and one of the Sannin in front of him, Kakuzu could afford no mistakes, so he would have to kill the girl first, take her heart, and then pursue Jiraiya. He could sew himself back together later. Kakuzu grunted and pulled down his mask, the inky blackness gushing from him like water. He kept a close eye on the girl as she ran toward him, swinging her sword down to sever his black essence, and then he moved it away, causing it to rise up and strike her. 10-10 jumped back before any part of him could seize her, because if she allowed him to get her, it was over, and he would tear her to pieces and take her heart. 10-10 inhaled deeply and purged her mind of all thoughts. She would need to be completely focused for this. Since none of her jutsus were strong enough to harm him, she would just need to rely on her sword and her cunning. Kakuzu was aware of this and would undoubtedly use it against her. 10-10 jumped into the air and brought the sword down onto his shoulder, only to be snatched and swept back by the blackness. Her limbs spread out, as she swerved and pirouetted, dodging all of his stabs at her with his black essence. Kakuzu cutting through the jet black ink and sending it to the ground. Kakuzu would have smirked if he could have. Jiraiya was on his way, but he knew he wouldn't make it in time, exhausted as he was. Jiraiya watched in horror as 10-10 struggled and Kakuzu hurried up to her, his hand reattaching and sewing itself back together, his blank eyes gleaming evilly as he pulled his hand back, preparing for the killing blow. Girl, it has been enjoyable. Know that I will continue to be of use to you. As the girl spat out blood and the man pressed his hand into 10-10's chest, Jiraiya screamed. Kakuzu's eyes glowed with joy before going glassy with confusion, and he looked down at his chest, where Kakuzu was protruding with his heart impaled on the end of it. He gurgled and turned his head to see 10-10, barely standing, before the 10-10 in front of him exploded in smoke. Cage, Bunshin, you little bitch, with her sword still impaled through the man's chest, 10-10 let out a gasping laugh and fell to the ground. My boyfriend hasn't used his favorite jutsu in a long time, but it's his favorite. For the one, I had enough. When you spit that black shit out of your mouth, I switched places with it. As Kakuzu considered the situation, his eyes grew increasingly glassy. All these years, and I get beaten by a little kid. Jiraiya collapsed next to 10-10 and wrapped his arm around the girl's shoulder so she could rest on him. 10-10, that was excellent. He didn't anticipate it. All of that preparation paid off. Jiraiya steadied her as best he could, and 10-10 sighed heavily as she gave him a tired smile and stumbled back to her feet, using Kakuzu as a crutch, the sword still singing happily at the devastation she had caused. Let's locate Naruto. Hidan hasn't returned yet, so I assume they're still at odds. They never expected to see the scene they did, and 10-10 was horrified to see Hidan restrained by 4 Narutos in the center of an arcane circle while Naruto stabbed himself with his hammer and hit and cut himself with his chain. What was even worse was that Hidan's wounds continued to appear while Naruto simply absorbed the damage. For the first time in a long time, Hidan was truly praying for his own death, and his screams had stopped long ago because the pain was too great and he had already screamed until his throat was hoarse. The swaggering, foul-mouthed ninja had vanished, leaving only a shell of the once proud worshipper of Jashin. Naruto let his chain drop the hammer to the ground and picked it up in his hand, and Jiraiya and 10-10 watched as he slowly made his way to stand by Hidan's head. The battered ninja rolled his head to look up at Naruto, his bravado long gone. With a blank expression, as though Hidan were not beneath him, Naruto raised the hammer far above him, and Jiraiya and 10-10 both knew what was about to happen. In the eyes of the kami, You have committed numerous sins, Hidan. It didn't help you in the end, and I'm not sure what Jashin promised you if you served him. Over the years, you have killed a lot of innocent people for no reason. That demon won't rise again, and you won't receive any forgiveness. You are guilty. When the hammer crashed down, Hidan's eyes hardened and he started to scream and curse at Naruto, but all that came out was Jashin. Sama. Naruto heard the familiar sound of skull breaking and brain splattering as the hammer fell hard. He raised the hammer and scowled at the remains of Hidan, the body still trying to move despite the absence of his head, and he turned weary to Jiraiya and Tenten as he sealed his hammer away and his chain wound around his waist while Tenten sealed Keppaku. Jiraiya grinned as Tenten fell into Naruto's arms and he sat down hard on the ground. Can you get rid of the bodies, sensei? After burning them both, Yominuma sinks them. If possible, their bodies will never be discovered. Tenten gave him a drowsy glance before nuzzling him further. How is his scythe doing? Naruto sighed as he turned to face the weapon. I'll destroy it. Slowly he stood with Tenten in the bridle position, his arms encircling her. Sensei, we're returning to Tezuna's. When you're done, come over there. Jiraiya nodded, called forth a large enough frog to spit oil on the corpses, and started burning them before burying them in the ground for all time. When Tsunami saw Naruto and Tenten, she almost had a stroke, but a wing gently brushed her aside as the boy climbed the stairs and fell onto the bed, holding Tenten close to him as they slept for almost 2 days. The family was waiting for them with Jiraiya, who didn't look any better than them, and they stumbled down the stairs when they woke up. The two sat back, stuffed with food, and rubbed their bellies, but Jiraiya caught their attention by coughing into his hand while he cradled his other arm, which was still hurting from punching Kakuzu. We're about to depart. We're returning to Konoha. Naruto shook his head, and Tenten and he exchanged glances before turning back to the Toad Sannin. However, we haven't yet vanquished Akatsuki. Why are we returning early? Jiraiya sipped his drink and shot him a sour look. I'm worn out, Naruto. You are, too. Tenten is, too. For months, we have been traveling, evading attacks and launching retaliatory strikes. We must take a vacation. We must return home and make our report. We're exhausted. We're heading home. He nodded docilely and leaned back in his chair. To be honest, he and Tenten both wanted to go home. He was exhausted, and it sounded great to sleep safely and soundly for a while. He kissed Tenten on the cheek and got up from the table, declaring that he was going to destroy Hidan's side. Everyone heard the smash as he broke it into a million pieces, and it would never bother anyone again. When the 3 Konoha ninjas left Wave a few days later to return home, they encountered no opposition and had a pleasant journey overall. With their distinctive features, it was hard not to recognize the weapon's mistress, the Toad Sannin, and the Angel of Konoha, and the gate guards of Konoha recognized them instantly and allowed them to pass with a salute. When Jiraiya told them that they needed to check in with Tsunade before they could go home, both teenagers moaned but obeyed, hoping it would only be a brief visit. When Naruto opened the door to Tsunade's office, he was astounded to see Itachi standing next to her desk, chatting with her. Naruto stomped forward, narrowing his eyes. Why in the world are you here? Itachi gave the boy a cool look, and a tiny smile tugged at his lips. Your strength has increased even further. Fantastic. The immortals fell before you, I see. Naruto-kun, it's time for us to move, which is why I'm here. The Akatsuki is practically extinct. Pain and Tobi are the only ones remaining. As Tenten flanked Naruto's other side and glanced at Tsunade first, then Itachi, Jiraiya moved to his side. How about the female? A woman was present in Akatsuki. Gone. I got rid of her. Tenten looked back at Itachi with a scowl. Itachi, explanations are in order. It has been months since we last heard from you. Itachi gestured for them to sit down after nodding and sweeping his hand. I'll go over everything that has happened over the last few months. Take a seat. The 3 sat down, anticipating what would be said, and Itachi inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly, and then looked each of them in the eyes. First things first. Madara is aware of my treachery. I'm here for that reason. Naruto nodded his head while scowling. So, we're about to take action? Yes. We are going to take action. Itachi looked around the room and inhaled deeply. He was surrounded by some of the nation's strongest ninjas. His eyes flickered dangerously as he locked eyes with his opponent of choice. Naruto saw the insanity behind Itachi's eyes, but he didn't recoil. It was always waiting to emerge, just beneath the surface. I disposed of Konan when she saw me come out of Pain's room. I had been looking for more clues as to the best way to go about things when she walked in. To keep her quiet, I ensnared her in Tsukiyomi, impaling her with swords for 3 days. Her brain shut down, thinking she had been stabbed to death. Jiraiya coughed into his hand while slowly nodding his head. "Are you sure you disposed of her, Itachi?" Conan was said to have most extraordinary powers, being able to disperse into paper and get away. Itachi simply blinked and spoke in a monotone. Her paper ability did her no good against Amaterasu. If she was not dead after Tsukiyomi, she was dead after being burnt to ashes. She is no longer a problem. Jiraiya remained uncertain. He was about to express his disbelief in Itachi when the Uchiha interrupted. "I made sure she was dead. I knew her chakra signature. Trust me, Jiraiya. Sama, she is dead." Ten sat forward while Jiraiya sat back huffily. "What else happened? You didn't contact us for months. What the hell were you doing?" "I was under scrutiny by the organization. Madara did not fully trust me any longer and Pain has never trusted me. When Kisame and Zetsu were killed, I was not allowed to go on missions unsupervised anymore. Madara kept me under close watch." After sitting in silence for some time, Naruto suddenly felt a connection. "Wait a minute. What about Tobi? Where is he? Did you kill him too?" Itachi tilted his head sideways in mild bewilderment. "I thought I made it clear that he was still alive. Tobi is Madara just as Madara is Tobi." Ten turned pale as the group gasped. "So, when I was fighting him that time?" Itachi gave a nod of confirmation. "Yes, that was Uchiha Madara. You scared him though, Ten-san. Your weapon confuses and confounds him. When Samahada was under Kisami's control, it never bothered him. The sword has changed somehow, in more ways than one." Keppaku materialized in Tenten's hand as she merely swept her hand over her seal. Itachi was startled when it started tugging on his chakra as soon as he reached out to touch it. He scowled at Ten and jerked his hand back. With a shrug, she leaned on the handle and sat Keppaku on the ground, tipped down. "She doesn't like you. She says your chakra doesn't taste good, that it is foul." Itachi's brow lifted a tiny bit, but he ignored it for the time being. He looked over at Tsunade. "Hokage. Sama, now is the time to strike. Pain and Madara are the only ones left. Then, we go after Sasuke." "No, you will wait." As everyone turned, they saw Sanosuke standing with his hands behind his back in the room's corner. The bearded angel grinned at every resident as he moved deeper into the light. "Hello everyone. It's good to see you all again." While Itachi and Naruto remained stoic, Jiraiya, Ten and Tsunade all grinned at him. Naruto scowled at him as he got up from his chair. "Where the hell have you been? A lot of shit has gone down since you visited last." Naruto didn't even bat an eyelid when Sanosuke glared at the boy. By now he was accustomed to the glares from the angel. "I was watching. That is what I'm supposed to do, Naruto. I watch and I observe. It's against my station to even tell you things or help, but I'm under orders from Kami herself. I'm here to tell you what has happened since Itachi left the Akatsuki." Everyone's ears were alert, and Sanosuke let out a sigh. It wouldn't go over well. "Sasuke's group, Habi, has joined up with Akatsuki. They'll be searching for you now. They have their numbers back up again." Naruto snarled and Itachi swore softly. "It's a never-ending damn struggle. We dwindle them down and the assholes recruit more people. I suppose that Itachi's defection has absolutely nothing to do with Madara recruiting Sasuke?" Sanosuke turned his head toward the ceiling and closed his eyes. "It has everything to do with it. Itachi betrayed Akatsuki. He slaughtered Sasuke's family. Madara wants him dead. Sasuke wants him dead. Madara wants the Kyuubi. Sasuke is known to be able to subdue it in a single-minded in his pursuit of his brother. It's just good business for the two to join up." Naruto nodded and twiddled his thumbs as he gazed at the ground. Ten gave him a comforting shoulder rub and smiled slightly. "Well, at least we won't have to go far to find the two now. They'll surely be traveling together." Sanosuke cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention once more. As he spoke, his expression was serious. "They've gone after the final Jinchuriki, the 8 tails. Once they've acquired it, they'll come here for Naruto. Why chase after them when they'll come and knock on your door?" With clenched teeth, Naruto struck Tsunade's desk with his fist. "I don't want them destroying Konoha. If it's avoidable, I don't want them coming here at all." Itachi gazed toward the historic Uchiha neighborhood outside the window. It appeared so distant. "We have time to prepare. There are things you must know about Pain and Madara, and about my brother. There is a lot that we have to do." With a grunt, Naruto reclined in his chair. "So, let's talk then. Tell me about them so I'm not left in the dark." Itachi slowly shook his head. "Information is not free, Naruto-kun. I tell you about Madara and Pain, then you have to tell me of your abilities." Gritting his teeth, Naruto got up from his seat. That's not fair, Itachi. That would leave me in the dark about your abilities when we fight. If you know about my secrets, that develops a handicap and then it's not a fair fight. Itachi smiled slightly at him. Life is not fair, Naruto-kun. My knowledge has a price. Naruto folded his arms and reclined in his chair. Considering we've been killing all the damn Akatsuki members as of late, I believe your information is already bought, Itachi. All you've killed is Konan and Kisame. Our body count is 4 tier 2. You owe us answers. With his head tilted to one side, Itachi gazed at the blonde. You keep saying, us, our, and we. Our deal only involves the two of us, Naruto-kun. The others do not matter. With his height advantage, Naruto had to look down a little as he rose from his chair and stood in front of the Uchiha. He ground out his response and gave Itachi a hard poke in the chest. The others do matter, Itachi. They've been with me the entire trip and have done more than their share of taking on Akatsuki. They're in this just as much as the two of us. Itachi simply extended his finger in Naruto's direction while looking up at the taller blonde. Itachi smirked slightly, his voice barely above a whisper, and poked the blonde in the forehead without flinching. It's just not the same when they're taller than you. With a raised eyebrow, Naruto fixed the Uchiha with intense gaze. What the hell are you talking about? With a sigh, Itachi lowered his hand and tipped his head to the floor. Nothing. If you want to know about the others, come with me. I'll only tell you though. If you wish to share this information with the others, then that is your prerogative. If you wish to talk, then come to the Uchiha district. I shall be residing in the clan house. You'll find me in the innermost room. The others stood while Itachi shunned away. Naruto surveyed the area before making his way to the door. He was called after by Tenten. Where are you going? His shoulders drooped as he turned at the door. She scowled behind him. He appeared so exhausted. I'm going to speak to Itachi. It's better to get this over with now. Please, don't follow me. I'll return shortly. Tenten, wait for me at home please. I'll see the rest of you tomorrow. Without turning around, he left, his geta clacking on the floor, the sound growing progressively softer as he went. Tenten twitched her hands anxiously until Sanosuke placed his hand on her shoulder and smiled comfortingly. Don't worry, Tenten. He'll be fine. In the meantime, those two didn't stick around to hear what else I had to say. Jiraiya walked over to stand next to Tsunade, who was leaning back against the wall with his arms folded. Well, let's hear it then. As Naruto strolled through the streets with his hands in his pockets and his head tilted thoughtfully toward the ground, the residents of Konoha were unsure of how to react. He had opened his wings from the seal and allowed them to land behind his back as soon as he had stepped out of the Hokage Tower. He had no desire to take a plane to his destination. There were times when there was a reason to walk. Of course, it was to give him a chance to think. Happy to see the angel of Konoha again, young children rushed up to him and asked to touch his wings. He told them to shoo and smiled slightly at each of them. Today he didn't have time to play, but maybe tomorrow. For a moment, he paused and gazed at the sky. The sky was filled with the oranges, pinks, and purples of the approaching sunset in the afternoon. The clouds appeared so serene as they hung in that sea of hues. With 10-10, I wish I could just stand here and watch the colors change forever. As they approached him, he heard the crunch of sandals. He knew they could only belong to one person because they had been slowly following him ever since he left the tower. Hello, Sensei. Kakashi lowered his book to speak, grinning at his former student. Hello, Naruto. I hope you're well. Naruto gave a nod and kept his gaze fixed on the sky. As well as can be, Sensei. I'm fine. As the book slowly slid lower, Kakashi's smile faltered a bit. How is 10-10? Fine. The book and smile slipped further. How is Jiraiya? Sama. Fine. The smile had thinned and he had put the book in his pouch. Naruto, do you not wish me to speak to you? With a sigh, Naruto met Kakashi's gaze and smiled slightly. I'm sorry, Sensei. I'm just preoccupied. I'm going to meet Itachi and speak with him. With a nod, Kakashi shifted his position to face Naruto. Everyone on the street had paused to gaze. After all, there is quite a stir when the angel and the copy ninja are on the same street. What's with the sensei business? I thought I wasn't your sensei anymore. With a small laugh, Naruto reached deeper into his pockets. I just thought that you deserved the title, if nothing else. You were my sensei after all. Through his mask, Kakashi's smile returned a bit more. I'm glad. It's good to be acknowledged as one of the men who trained a growing legend after all. Naruto laughed once more and turned back to the ground. With a sigh, Kakashi touched the boy's shoulder. Naruto, come with me. I have something to show you. Naruto smirked as he took out his notorious Uchiha and buried his nose in it as he walked with Kakashi to their destination. You know, I think I heard him say that the next one isn't supposed to be smut. Kakashi gave Naruto a playful narrowing of his eye. I won't have such blasphemy spoken in my presence. I'm just saying, blasphemy. I have spoken. They carried on after Naruto laughed. Naruto observed that the more they walked, the more he recognized the area. They soon entered the former training facility used by Team 7. Ignoring his surroundings, Kakashi guided them both to the memorial stone. Naruto cast a questioning glance at his former sensei. Why did you bring me here, sensei? With a sigh, Kakashi put his book away and put it in his pouch. He kept his eyes fixed on the stone, glancing over the names, concentrating on a few. Hitaki Sakumo, Sarutobi, Uzumaki Kushina, Rin, Namikaze Minato, and Uchiha Obito. He closed his eyes and let out a deep shuddering sigh. Do you know why I was late all those times when the three of you were younger, Naruto? The blonde glanced at the man with the gray hair, then back at the stone. Because you're a lazy bum? The barb was not answered by Kakashi. No, it's because I was here. I'd get here before dawn and I'd stay here until I couldn't stand to look at the names anymore. I get lost in memories. I wasn't lying in a sense. I did get lost on the road of life. The problem was that I was always traveling in reverse. Reaching down on his knees, Kakashi touched his father's name with his right hand. I miss those whose names are on this stone so much, Naruto. Years ago, I'd go on suicide missions just in the hopes that I'd die and I'd get to see them all again. But, I seem to lead a charmed life. It seems that I've been trained too well. As the man ran his fingers over the names of Obito and Rin and laughed bitterly, Naruto simply listened. Hindsight is 20/20, Naruto. I regret so many things in my life, too many to count. I just like to say I'm sorry for everything that's happened between us. Naruto grinned broadly at Kakashi and shook his head. I thought we settled this already, sensei. It bore repeating. Did you ever talk to Sakura? Naruto gave himself a forehead slap. Shit. No, I never did. I'll need to do that. Is she pissed at me? Well, she isn't happy. With a sigh, Naruto touched Sarutobi's name with his fingers. She's never happy. It's like she's on a permanent period. After exchanging a laugh and rising to their full height, the two men bowed their heads and prayed for a while. At the same moment, they stopped praying and looked at each other. Tell Sakura that I'll speak with her soon, okay? I'm sure you'll see her before me. I will. It was good to see you again, Naruto. Don't be afraid to stop by for a chat or something. I'll do that. I guess I'll go see Itachi now. I've kept him waiting long enough. Unimpressed by the shadows that seemed to grow longer and shorter on their own, Naruto strolled around the Uchiha district. It seemed as though the ghosts themselves were still roaming around the area, oblivious to the fact that they had been knocked down years before. It was unsettling. He eventually reached Itachi's former home and slid the door open. A voice called out, echoing off the walls, as he was about to enter the house. Take your shoes off, please. The place might have been abandoned, but that doesn't mean good manners have to be. With a frown, Naruto removed his geta and padded down a hallway and across the floor. He was only moving in the direction of the signature Itachi was releasing, and he soon discovered him sitting on a tatami mat in the lotus position. A scroll was unfolded on a pedestal behind him, and two torches blazed on either side of him. Itachi did not appear to acknowledge Naruto's presence and remained in his place. Cobwebs and dirt had covered the rest of the house in the neighborhood, and the buildings were in some state of ruin. The room he was in now was the only one that wasn't dirty. Itachi opened his eyes and glanced up at him, as though he could guess what he was thinking. I cleaned up in here while I was waiting for you. Now please, sit. We have much to discuss. Naruto took another look around the room while sitting on a pillow across from Itachi, who was no more than 5 feet away. He was troubled by the mural on the wall and the scroll on the pedestal. Everything seemed to be done for a sinister reason. This is the room where it all began, Naruto.kun. This is the room where I decided that my family had to die. Naruto was instantly alert when his head snapped back to the front. What do you mean? With a sigh, Itachi closed his eyes and returned to the lotus position. Please, don't interrupt me while I'm speaking. It's hard enough telling someone else this. Naruto waited for him to start after nodding, sensing that Itachi could at least sense it. After a few silent moments, the man did so. My family was going to betray the village. That's why I killed them. They wanted to stage a coup, because they felt that they were not appreciated and were not given enough power. With a sneer, Itachi cocked his head slightly. Political power is all well and good, but but I have always thought individual power is what the driving force should be. Politics are for old men who are useless on the field of battle and have to let their tongues do the fighting for them. My clan wanted more power in the village. Always going on and on about the clan. This and the clan, that. It sickened me. His shoulders drooped as he shifted slightly. I was a double agent inside of the clan, reporting directly to the Sandame. We decided that they couldn't be allowed to incite civil war, and I was given the task of dealing with them, by any means I saw fit. Incredulous, Naruto shook his head. But if that's true, then you'd be a hero. Why did you run away? Itachi's Mangekyo spun as his eyes widened and he glared at the blonde. The two gazed intently at one another as Naruto's wings dangerously flared behind him. I thought I asked you not to interrupt. Yes, in the eyes of the village I would have been a hero, if it was released what the clan was planning. But, our name would have been disgraced. The name of Uchiha incites fear into the hearts of our enemies, and I couldn't stand the shame of knowing that my kinsmen had brought this on themselves. So, we came up with another plan. I would leave Sasuke alive and he could avenge the clan at a later date. Before turning around and exposing a Uchiha fan on the back of his shirt, Itachi got up from his chair and let his Akatsuki robe drop. This is what it was all done for, Naruto-kun. The pride and honor of the clan. It's the reason they were using to stage a coup, and it's the reason I had to slaughter them all. They would have tarnished the pride and honor of our clan. They thought they could take on a village of ninjas by themselves, that one clan could take over. They were fools. The model of decorum, he sighed and returned to his mat. The Sharingan is not all powerful. Nothing is, not even the Rinnegan. There is always a price to pay or a weakness inherent in everything. I've seen you defeat the Sharingan, Naruto-kun. I've seen Maida Guy move at speeds beyond it. I know that Rock Lee can do that as well. These eyes are a curse more than a blessing. They make one arrogant, thinking they can do anything without consequence. His black eyes, which reflected the torch's flickering flame, met the blonde's, the Mangekyo gone. I was an Anbu. It is taught that arrogance can get you killed, and so I killed all my emotions. But, even that is a lie. I cried after I killed my family. We're still human after all, even if we lie to ourselves that we're not. I joined Akatsuki because Madara offered to teach me the true ways of the Sharingan, and he did. He stood up once more and rolled the scroll closed after removing it from the pedestal. This scroll is the whole cause of the uprising. It tells of a way to gain a Sharingan beyond the Sharingan. The eternal Mangekyo, a Sharingan without consequence. The price is heavy and is totally unacceptable, but I want it. I must have it, to measure my capacity, to measure my worth in this world. I have destroyed my family. I have nothing left to live for, except one final, glorious battle. I have become the image I painted all those years ago. He turned back to Naruto, absorbing the hateful glare from the blonde. I see you must have already guessed the price. Sasuke's eyes. I need them so that I can use my Mangekyo without consequence. If I am a demon in the eyes of the world, then so shall I become a demon. I will take my brother's precious eyes, the ones that he holds so dear, thinking that they make him special, and I shall use them to fight you to the death. With a growl, Naruto jumped off the ground, spreading his wings behind him. This is insane, Itachi. First, you say that you were sorry you killed your family and then you go and say you want to kill Sasuke off now. You're contradicting yourself. No, I'm not. With a grunt, Naruto dropped his wings behind him. Explain. Sasuke has tarnished our family's final image. He was to restore the clan's honor in an honorable way. Instead, he took up with Orochimaru, another blemish on Konoha. He went against the plan, taking the easy way to power. He serves no purpose to the original plan anymore. Now, his purpose is to help me gain my eternal Mangekyo so that we may battle. Naruto simply shook his head and stared with wide eyes. So, you want him gone because he doesn't serve a purpose anymore? Itachi, that's cold. We're ninjas, Naruto-kun. We are used every day. Sasuke's role was to bring back honor to our name at the cost of my life. Konoha was to look upon us again as an honorable clan. He betrayed the village and therefore, his purpose is null and void. He has a new purpose now. Grinning, Naruto took a seat again. I know your plans for Sasuke now. Now tell me about Madara and Pain. Itachi crossed his legs, sat down again, and nodded. Very well. We'll start with Madara. Ten was waiting for Naruto to return while she bit her fingernails. Sanosuke had given her some very bad news. It appears that Sasuke was now not only pursuing Itachi but also wanted to destroy Konoha after learning from Madara about the massacre's beginnings. She was waiting for Naruto to return home after leaving the Hokage's office a short while ago. It was only now that she realized how lonely it was without him. It was nearly intolerable to be alone. She hurried to the door after hearing a knock and threw it open. With his hands in his pockets and his wings rustling behind him, Naruto stood there. She nuzzled his chest and flung herself into his arms. "Kami, I missed you. Did you learn anything from Itachi?" Naruto leaned her back and kissed her forehead while grinning down at her. "I was only gone for a few hours, Chan. It wasn't like I wasn't coming back. And yes, I did learn a few things from Itachi. Very useful things. We'll have to use them to come up with a strategy. Anything else happen while I was gone?" She led him into the living room, closed the door behind them, and nodded. As he sat down on the couch and she leaned against him, enjoying the warmth he exuded, his wings retracted into the tattoo. "Sasuke wants to destroy Konoha because of the truth of the Uchiha massacre, whatever that means. It turns out Madara is doing all this so he can get back at Konoha. It's all an elaborate setup to destroy the village." With a sigh, Naruto drew her nearer. He thanked Kami for helping him find 10-10 during these moments. "I kind of gathered that. Itachi told me the real story behind the massacre. It's not what we were always told, and I'm sure Sasuke hates Itachi more because of the truth." He put his finger to her lips and smiled at her as 10-10 looked up at him, her eyes wide, ready to ask him what he meant. "No more questions tonight. No answers. Let's enjoy ourselves. Let's relax." As he abruptly threw her onto her stomach and straddled her from behind, he leaned over to whisper in her ear while using his hands to push her shoulders down. His smile became more playful. "I believe it's been a long time since you've had a full body massage. Let's see if I'm still in practice, huh?" 10-10 started his ministrations with a joyful groan. That was a point she would not contest. All of the so-called Rookie 9 and Team Guy, as well as all of the senseis, Anbu, and Junin, were in a conference room in the Hokage Tower the following day. Naruto and Itachi stood on either side of Tsunade, who was in the center. Talk about the two ninjas standing next to the Godem filled the room. The room fell silent as soon as Tsunade cleared her throat. Tsunade took in every face as she scanned the room. They were all taking it very seriously. Naturally, you know something is wrong when an angelic Jinchuriki and one of the strongest Nukenin are in front of you. We're here today to let you know that a grave danger is coming upon our village. It has recently been learned that Uchiha Madara and the Akatsuki, along with Uchiha Sasuke, are going to try to overthrow Konoha. You are all here to let you know of the threat and how we will prepare for it." Once more, the murmur reverberated through the crowd. The name had to be credible even though no one knew who Uchiha Madara was. Uchiha Madara is a man who thinks he's immortal. He fought the Shodai to a standstill. He is very powerful. You all know who Uchiha Sasuke is. I want you all to know your roles in this battle. They'll be coming to our doorstep. The time Orochimaru invaded will have nothing on this. This, ladies and gentlemen, is war. These criminals intend to march onto our doorstep and do as they please. Will we let them? There was a loud no from everyone in the room. Tsunade turned to Itachi with a smile. "The floor is yours." Itachi looked out over the crowd and nodded his head. "I don't expect any of you to like me or what I've done. The fact of the matter is that that's all in the past, for the moment at least. I will take my brother. All I ask is that the rest of you stay out of the way of my fight. The battle between me and Sasuke has been a long time coming." His gaze wandered about the room, absorbing the range of reactions from outright hatred to mild disgust. He turned to Naruto and bowed his head. "You're up." With a sigh, Naruto stretched the kinks out of his wings and spread them out behind him. "Itachi will take Sasuke. 10-10 and I will take Madara. Our weapons are the only things that can kill him that we know of, so he will be ours. Stay out of the way." With a dramatic sigh, Tsunade pushed him back a little. "Thanks. Wonderful speeches to raise the morale, you two." She put her hands on the table in front of her and glanced out over the crowd once more. "But as they said, stay out of their way. The rest of us will all have our own jobs to do. Jiraiya and I will take on Pain. If we need any help taking him on, we will send for help immediately. The rest of you are to secure the village and take on the rest of the Akatsuki. We've been informed that they are extremely dangerous. Missions will be top priority only. We can't afford to have the majority of our Junin out of hand until this is over with." She scowled and inhaled deeply. "This is huge news, I know. I want you all to go home to your families. Visit your friends. Remember why you love this village so much, and tomorrow, come back here at 9 a.m. for the rest of the debriefing. We're going to win this. We're going to prevail. We will survive, for Konoha." The ninjas who had gathered stood and covered their hearts with their right fist. For Konoha. As the gathered Konoha forces filed out to be with their loved ones, hands returned to their owners' sides. Tsunade turned back to Itachi and Naruto, who now had 10-10 by his side, after watching them leave. Sakura and Kakashi had also chosen to remain because they felt accountable for Sasuke. Jiraiya approached Tsunade and stood next to her, offering assistance. Well, that went well. Now then, Itachi, perhaps you can tell us a little about pain. Itachi looked at the Toad Sannin with boredom and blinked slowly. I said yesterday that I would only tell Naruto. I did. If he wants to tell you, then that is his business. I'll take my leave now. Jiraiya snarled in exasperation as he vanished with a shunshin. Little brat. Well then, it's up to you, Naruto. With a nod, the blonde sat down and gestured for the others to follow suit. First off, as I understand it, you trained Pain once upon a time. It was during the last war in Omegakure, and he has a dujutsu. When he slammed his fist down on the table, Jiraiya's eyes widened and Tsunade gave him a questioning look. That little bastard. Tsunade recoiled slightly as he turned to face her. The expression in his eyes was completely different from the Jiraiya she was accustomed to seeing. Orochimaru was right about one thing back then. I should have killed him when I had the chance. Everyone's curiosity was now aroused. Tsunade gazed at Jiraiya as if he had developed a new head. Who in the hell are you talking about? In their peculiar relationship, Jiraiya gave her a look that caused her to stop talking right away. Pain is a one-time student of mine whose real name is Nagato. Remember those 3 kids we found begging for food back in Omegakure during the Second War? He was the little black-haired boy. I stayed with them for 3 years, trained them to protect themselves, and during that time he developed the Rinnegan. He killed a ninja who was trying to kill Yahiko, one of the other orphans, and his dujutsu kicked in. Tsunade's eyes widened as she searched her mind for these children. It's almost prophetic. Orochimaru told you to kill them and you didn't. Sensei should have killed Orochimaru and didn't. Naruto should have killed Sasuke and didn't. It's like a cycle that just continues. She raised her hands in a conciliatory gesture as Jiraiya and Naruto glared at her. Whoa, easy, easy. I was just saying, Naruto sighed, obviously irritated. We know what you were saying. Having your failures pointed out so bluntly is not very flattering though. We plan to rectify those mistakes very soon, however. Since you're going to take Pain, I think you should know about how the Rinnegan works, or what Itachi found out anyway. Ten and the 2 Sannin were immediately focused. Pain is more than one person. Ten blinked and asked the question that everyone was thinking about. What? Disappointed, Naruto wiped his face with his hand. He had to be more careful with his wording. His dujutsu is different from everything else. Being a descendant of the Sage of the 6 Paths, he has certain powers. Any enemy he kills becomes a body of his. Jiraiya was making every effort to assimilate the information, but he was unable to do so. Explain further. Okay, when he kills someone, he possesses their body. His Rinnegan eyes become part of the body and he gives the body piercings to match that of his original body. According to Itachi, the Rinnegan is a true dujutsu, like the Byakugan and the Sharingan. Instead of copying things or seeing 360 degrees around the body, the Rinnegan allows the wielder to use the other bodies to increase its field of vision, and it's shared between all the bodies. Tsunade bent slightly further forward. So what you're saying is that each body sees what the others see? Yes. Ten looked at Naruto incredulously. How the hell is that possible? The information overload to the brain would be astronomical. Who could possibly process and sort that kind of information? How could you be sure of which body is seeing what? Naruto looked at her helplessly and shrugged. I dunno. I just know that's what Itachi told me. Each body shares views with the other bodies. So let's say each one is hiding at a different point where 2 hallways intersect. They can see each side of the hallways and each can plan on how to strike. Jiraiya nodded in order to gain a better understanding of his opponent. How do they communicate with each other? Itachi didn't know. How does he control 6 bodies at once? Itachi didn't say. Tsunade sighed and rubbed her temples. Did Itachi tell you anything else of importance about Pain? Naruto gave a headshake. There wasn't much else he could find out. Pain is very secretive. The fact that Itachi even found out he has other bodies is nothing short of a miracle. Konan kept Itachi under constant watch, following him by pretending to be part of a painting on the wall or a napkin on a table. She was a master of infiltration and surveillance. Jiraiya folded his arms and let out a loud sigh. Well, that's more than we had to go on. Better than nothing. What about Madara? Ten gazed expectantly at Naruto, curious about their opponent of choice. Naruto smiled and shrugged again. Nothing much to say about him. Our weapons negate his little time. Space continuum jutsu, and other than that, he's just a regular Sharingan user. The only difference is that his Mangekyo has no consequence. Tsunade gave the blonde a fierce look. Everything has a consequence, even the eternal Mangekyo. 10-10 gave a head nod. Yeah, he had to kill his brother and take his eyes. That was a consequence. In focus, Naruto bit his lip. Well, if he feels no remorse for it, it wasn't really a consequence. The normal Mangekyo makes you go blind if you use it too much. The eternal Mangekyo negates that, but I don't know what the weakness is. Itachi never said there was one. Jiraiya closed his eyes and hemmed. Even so, there is always an inherent weakness in everything. You can fly right now, Naruto, but you still aren't strong enough to lift off on your own. 10-10 is a master with her sword, but her jutsus are still weak. Tsunade's Suzu Seisei gives her energy, but takes years off her life. My Sage mode is powerful, but I haven't fully mastered it yet and it gives me frog-like attributes. The other three were staring at him with raised eyebrows when he opened his eyes. Tsunade placed her hands on her hips and impatiently tapped her sides. Sage mode? What is that? Another time. You'll more than likely see when we fight pain. The four fell silent as Tsunade snarled, as they were at a loss for words. After a few moments of silence, Jiraiya finally spoke. Should we find Itachi and ask him how he's going to handle Sasuke? Naruto gave a headshake. No, it would just annoy him. As long as Sasuke dies, the deal is set. Orochimaru dies with him and then I can get rid of Itachi. You two take care of Pain while Chan and I take care of Madara. It'll all work out in the end, I promise. 10-10's nervousness decreased slightly, but neither of the two Sannin was totally certain of what he had said. When Naruto was encouraging, it was difficult to be negative around him. And typically, when he said they would be okay, they would be okay. After bowing to the two senior ninja, she clasped Naruto's arm and pulled him out to spend the remainder of the day with them. Tsunade leaned back against the table and exhaled deeply. I'm getting too old for this shit. Jiraiya snorted and gave him a sidelong glance. You tell anyone you heard that and I swear I'll shove a kunai up your ass, sideways. Jiraiya simply smiled at her, a little, dejectedly. We really are getting too old for this shit. As Naruto and 10-10 walked by, chatting amiably, she nodded and peered out the window. Yeah. That's why after this is over I'm stepping down. It's time for a new generation to lead. And I know just who should lead them. As she pulled Naruto along, 10-10 laughed. She had finally had enough of him stalling in the room for as long as he could. Quit being a baby about this and let's go talk to her, it's not like she's going to kill you. With his wings flaring for extra drag, Naruto pressed his heels deeper into the ground. You don't know her like I do. She's going to punch first, ask questions later. Naruto, I'm serious. You're going. I don't wanna. With a frown on her face and her hands on her hips, 10-10 halted her movement and stood before him. You need to talk to her and you're going to damn well do it if I have to hogtie you and drag you there through the streets. With a sigh, Naruto lowered his wings in defeat as he glanced back at the two ruts his feet had created. 10-10 looked scornfully at his small display. He was not going to try to be cute in order to get out of it. But Chan, she'll hurt me. I'll hurt you worse if you don't go. I'll be there, it'll be fine. I swear you are the biggest wuss when it comes to her. You can fight S-rank missing ninja, but are scared to death of a little pink-haired girl. On their way to the hospital, he let out a dejected sigh and trailed behind her as she ranting and raving. For him, this could only result in traction. Sakura. Hearing the familiar voice, the pinkhead turned her head and smiled. Her hands moved the clipboard to one arm. 10-10. It's been a while. How are you and Naruto? She scowled a little as she took in his hangdog expression. It appeared as though he wasn't pleased to see her because of the way his wings were hanging limp, his pouty face, and his hands stuffed in his pockets. 10-10 frowned and followed Sakura's eyes before giving Naruto a shoulder slap. Stop that. You're being childish. She turned to Sakura, sighing and shaking her head as his pout grew deeper. He's afraid you're going to hit him because he didn't talk to you before we left. Can you please tell him you won't so we can talk? Sakura glared at the blonde as her scowl grew deeper and she placed her free hand on her hip. Naruto returned the glare. And what makes you think that I'd hit you right off the bat? Not like I have a lot of good experience with your temper. My memory might be a little fuzzy from all those past knocks to the head. As Sakura approached him, he stiffened but remained motionless. He closed his eyes as she held up the clipboard, already visualizing reaming 10-10 aloud to prove his correctness. 10-10 was grinning while holding Sakura's clipboard, and he was startled when he opened his eyes to see her embracing him. It's good to see you, Naruto. We missed the two of you. She hugged 10-10 and released the startled boy. I know we didn't part on very good terms, but I'd like to rectify that. Allow me to take the two of you to dinner tonight. I get off at 6. I'll swing by to get you to it. Where are the two of you staying? 10-10 had to respond because Naruto was still not involved. We'll be at my apartment. Should we dress nice? Dress formally. We'll eat at a nice restaurant. 10-10 assured Sakura that they would be prepared and nodded before dragging Naruto out by his arm. The pinkette waved and grinned before turning back to the chart. Yoshibari. Prostate exam. Room 112. She sighed as she cast a sorrowful glance back toward Naruto and the fading 10-10. Shit. I ought to have run when I had the opportunity. With his wings cut into the back of his shirt and jacket, Naruto shifted uncomfortably in his formal wear. While in Konoha, 10-10 had forbade him from concealing them. Not that it mattered. He had them, and everyone knew it. 10-10 slapped his hand as he tugged at the tie once more. Don't. It's only for a little while, Naruto. Just bear with it. With a growl, he inserted his finger once more between his collar and neck. I hate wearing these things. You know that. With her Chinese dress slightly revealing her legs, she flopped down next to him. Ignoring the fact that he was examining her bare legs, she gazed at him wearily. It's just for a little bit while we eat and talk. If you'd quit fidgeting, you wouldn't even notice you had a collar. Stop it. He gave a playful growl when she struck his hand once more. You're getting to be as bad as Sakura about smacking me. She gave him a fierce look and held up her hand as if to slap him if he attempted to remove the tie once more. If you didn't act like a 3-year-old, I wouldn't have to act like your mother. Stop trying to take the tie off. He playfully tugged at the tie and stuck his tongue out. What are you going to do about it? When he removed the tie, she gritted her teeth and narrowed her eyes even more. He pulled it away from her as she reached for it. Give it to me. No, he pulled it out of her reach once more as she jumped a little in her seat to get it. Give it to me, Naruto. No. With their bodies pressed together and their noses in contact, 10-10 seized his shoulders and scuttled into his lap, reaching over his head for the offending object. Give it. No. Ahem. Together, the two turned to see Sakura leaning against the doorframe, her face displaying a look of amusement. Squeaking, 10-10 leapt off Naruto and held out her hand for his tie as she glanced down at their position. He dutifully gave it to her and got up, allowing her to retie it for him. Sakura could hardly contain her laughter as 10-10 attempted to keep her composure following her humiliating experience. So, are you ready to go, Sakura? Oh, I don't know. Should I come back later? Imagine my surprise when I walk in and all I hear is, give it to me, Naruto. Naruto grunted as 10-10, flushed, tugged his tie through the knot and tightened it with a bit more effort. Can we go now, please? As 10-10 escorted Naruto to the door, Sakura nodded her head and giggled, her arm firmly gripping his. Sakura cast a critical glance at the two as they strolled. You two do make a cute couple, you know that? Sakura giggled once more as the two grunted, but they didn't say anything else during the remainder of the drive to the restaurant. After ordering food and drinks, the three sat down, and an awkward silence descended upon their table, until 10-10 finally snarled in exasperation. None of the three knew where to begin. Oh, this is ridiculous. How have you been, Sakura? Sakura grinned and gave 10-10 an appreciative glance. I've been doing good. Mostly working at the hospital. Shisho doesn't let me go on many missions anymore, since I'm needed more at home. The injured ninjas have been piling up lately, and I don't have Naruto to tend to anymore on missions. I wasn't that bad, and besides, you never really had to patch me up at all. I would have healed naturally. Before Sakura let out a sigh, the three fell silent once more. I'm sorry for the way I treated you two back then, it was very immature of me. 10-10 placed a comforting hand on Sakura's arm and smiled at the girl. We forgive you. It was a trying time for all of us. Let's forget about all that, though, okay? Dwelling on it isn't going to do any of us any good. Sakura gave a nod, but Naruto coughed before she could say anything. Did you ever find anyone for yourself, Sakura? She smiled despite her eyes becoming a little dimmer. No, not really. I was dating a civilian for a while, but he just doesn't understand the ninja lifestyle. Plus, he was really pushy. Kept trying to tell me what to do. Suddenly interested in someone who would dare to push Sakura around, Naruto woke up instantly. And, well, he kept pushing, until one day I pushed him through the wall. Literally. He spent a month in the infirmary. The tables surrounding Naruto and 10-10 were drawn to their loud laughter. With a sincere smile on her face, Sakura shushed them, but only partially. She calmed Naruto by touching his arm, and when he winced, her smile vanished. He glanced down as her hand fell back to the table. Sorry, did I really hit you that much back then? The pleasant atmosphere was completely destroyed when he nodded his head and she turned back to the tablecloth. After noticing the tense atmosphere, the waiter discreetly sat down the food and hurried out. 1010 sighed and stirred her rice. You know, we never used to have trouble talking to each other when we were younger. It seems the world is falling down around us nowadays and we can't speak more than 2 sentences to each other without feeling uncomfortable. Sakura nodded her head and took a sip of her drink, but she made no statement. This might have been a mistake. She had simply become too distant from Naruto. Naruto spoke just as she was ready to excuse herself and pay for their meals. Despite everything I said before we left, I did miss you and Kakashi. Even with all the hardships and bad blood back then, Team 7 was my team. Besides, we need to make up now before the Akatsuki get here. There's no telling if we'll make it out alive. He returned her smile with a smile of his own. Tell you what we'll do. We'll wipe the slate clean. Hello, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I'm Haruno Sakura. I'm 1010. Nice to meet you both. Let's tell a little about ourselves, The 3 of them had reconnected by the end of the evening and were soon conversing without animosity. It felt good to just chat, unwind, and take a break. This wouldn't be feasible soon. There may never be another chance. After the brief encounter, Sakura felt happier and lighter than she had in years. After leaving, Naruto and 1010 felt more content and joyful. It all comes full circle. Naruto smiled and gave 1010 a gentle shove. So, when are we doing this with Guy, Lee, and Neji? Never. I haven't heard anything about youth, or springtime, in over a year and I intend to keep it that way a little while longer. For a while, they strolled in contented silence until Naruto burst out laughing. The springtime of youth is strong within 10-chan. He never witnessed her unseal Keppaku, but when she clobbered him with the wide side of the feather on his butt, he could feel the crazy pull on his chakra. A month went by in a flash. Every Konoha ninja had been waiting for Akatsuki to show up. Everybody was training frantically in an attempt to gain as much power as they possibly could. Even the daimyo was under lockdown, and Tsunade had suspended all missions. It was war. They didn't have time for unnecessary things. After Tsunade herself almost barbecued him for fleeing, Tora understood the message and kept his ass at home. Even though the daimyo's wife was upset, she remained silent when Tsunade threatened her. Apparently, she didn't like rude dignitaries. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shikamaru had met to discuss a plan of action for handling pain. They would require more assistance if he had 6 bodies. In addition, someone would need to look after Sasuke's friends. All of this was becoming a huge headache, particularly for Shikamaru. Itachi was merely meditating on the tatami mat in the clan hall after locking himself in his clan house and refusing to leave. Even on a good day, Naruto was the only person he would dare talk to. He ignored him most of the time. 1010 was still terribly behind on jutsus, but he had finally managed to get down the Yomi Numa from Jiraiya. She would have to use Kenjutsu almost exclusively, not that anything else would be enough to defeat Madara. She was only concerned about Naruto. All he had done was stand in the middle of the field, his wings flapping languidly behind him, his eyes closed. He was normal, affectionate, and loving to her at night, but he was aloof during the day, as though he were not physically present. Since he was doing nothing, she could only speculate as to what was going through his mind. 1010 simply assumed that Naruto was being serious for once, and Keppaku had no response for her. And he meant it. After speaking with Sakura the following day, Naruto appeared to have gone into automatic pilot. To the outside world, Naruto appeared to be just standing motionless, but he was actually speeding up his ability to fly by channeling chakra to his wings, rubbing and beating the muscles to release tension. Although it was laborious, it was effective. 1010 would sneak out at night and fly around the village, scanning the vast forest for any indication of the Akatsuki while the rest of the village slept. He kept his nightly vigil, but he never found any. He circled the village at night, his wings beating against the air, and the guards who saw him just watched. They found it consoling, almost like he was an angel of protection. Sanosuke would occasionally stop by to chat with him and give him advice on various topics. Naruto listened, but he continued his routine, raising the dust with his wings beating close to the ground. He would mechanically follow 1010 when he came to get him for lunch, and then he would go back to work. Naruto was having a normal day when the village was filled with alarms. He swiftly looked up to see if anyone was there, but he couldn't find anyone. Leaping high into the air and bending low to the ground, he spread his wings and headed for the gates. It appeared that every Konoha ninja was lining the gates and the top of the wall. On top of the frame of the 2 enormous gates, Naruto could see the Konoha ninjas of his age group, Suande, Jiraiya, and the senseis. He could see people in familiar cloaks he detested with all his heart, walking steadily down the road in the distance. With his wings flapping behind him, he flew to the gate and landed beside Tenten and Tsunade. Kiba smiled as she glanced over. Glad you could join the party. As his chain wound around his arm, Naruto smiled back and opened his hammer. Tenten gently twirled the sword after opening Kepiku's seal. You guys ready? Although everyone nodded, there was a noticeable sense of unease. Naruto's eyes were bright as he stood erect. Judgment passes on us all today. Let's pray that judgment passes over us. Pain watched the winged man land on the frame of the gate. He glanced at the shorter Sasuke with his main body. Tell me, Sasuke-san, do you know anything about this, Angel of Konoha? With a sneer, Sasuke continued to see. Nothing except he's an incompetent fool that will die today, along with my traitorous brother. Indeed. I have unfinished business with my former sensei as well. Madara's Mangekyo spun as he glared at the two. Lest you two forget, these opponents are not to be taken lightly. Sasuke, if you think that Naruto is the same boy you fought all those years ago, you'll die. Pain, just because Jiraiya is getting on in years does not make him any less dangerous. If the two of you fail and survive, I'll kill you myself. Sasuke glared back at Madara, but Pain nodded in agreement. I'm only here because this is a partnership of convenience. Don't presume to order me around. Madara gave the younger Uchiha a sly smile. If you survive this, I'll show you why I presume to order you around, boy. The elder Uchiha's expression instantly changed as he reached into his cloak, took out the swirling orange mask, and put it on. Tobi thinks you're being a bad boy. If you keep going against the wishes of Akatsuki, you'll have to be punished. Toba's a good boy. Let Tobi show you the light. His tone reverted to that of the evil Madara, because if Tobi can't show you the light, Madara can damn well show you the darkness. With the weighty aura of death dissipating, he turned back to the front. Toba's glad to see they came to see Tobi. Hi, everybody, Tobi says HELLOO. Toba's a good boy. Tenten's grip on her sword tightened as she scowled. With a raised eyebrow, Naruto nodded his head toward her. When she heard Tobi yell, she snarled. Gods, I hate that man. It'll be no small pleasure killing him, if I have to hear one more. Toba's a good boy. He's dead. Posturing, talking, and attempts at humor were all absent. All of Konohagakure's ninja leapt from the wall and charged at the Akatsuki. The idea was to try to kill the Akatsuki with the best of the best, and if they failed and the enemy survived, the remaining Konoha nin would attack and murder them. Itachi went to Sasuke, Naruto and Tenten went directly to Madara, and the others went to Pain. Headlong into Sasuke, Itachi hooked his arm around the boy's waist and sent them both flying back into the woods. The sound of Sasuke's curses reverberated across the field. Nobody witnessed the real Itachi enter the forest in a composed manner. To get his brother, he had dispatched a cage bunshin. He wasn't a fool, but he was eager. Tsunade and Jiraiya led the charge to Pain, who merely scoffed as he glanced at the ninja approaching him. After calling forth his creatures, he just waited to see what they would do. When Kiba and Akamaru changed into a huge, two-headed dog and jumped for his panda, his eyes widened a little. In a matter of seconds, Shoji had grown enormous and was using his bow staff to swing away at a few of the summons. While the Junin moved forward to confront Pain, the other Konoha ninja Naruto's age stepped in to assist with the summoned creatures. As the Konoha ninja surrounded them, the 6 men in cloaks just looked on with apparent indifference. With emotionless eyes, the main body gazed at Jiraiya. Sensei, is all this really necessary? It seems a little extravagant for our one and only battle, doesn't it? Before he took his former student from this world, Jiraiya had one last question for him. Tell me, Nagato, why? All 6 bodies stiffened in preparation for battle as Pain blinked. The Nagato you knew is dead. There is only Pain now. We are Pain, we are God. We will burn this world to ashes, and then rebuild it in our image. We will show this world pain. We will show this world death. With a frown, Jiraiya took a small step back, preparing to activate his Sage mode. He had no quick rebuttal or appeal to common sense. It's time to rectify a past mistake of mine. Keep him occupied for a moment. Tsunade briefly glanced at Jiraiya before charging forward and striking the closest body. Asuma, Kurenai, Guy, and Kakashi all used their bodies, with Anko, Genma, and others similar to them serving as each other's backup. It would be a difficult battle despite the abundance of talent and skill. Tenten and Naruto made their way directly to Madara, who was wildly waving at them. Tenten gritted her teeth and extended her empty hand to Naruto, allowing Keppaku to follow behind. The blonde took hold of her hand and hurled her as forcefully as he could. As Madara flew by, Tenten swung her feathery sword at her head, nicking the mask but omitting anything important. The chain attached itself to the hammer's hilt and waved back and forth as Naruto skidded to a stop and unsealed his weapon. Toby thinks. Ten tightened her hold on Kakuzu while baring her teeth. Don't even start, Madara. Drop the act. I can't stand that voice or those mannerisms. The nin with the orange mask laughed and grabbed the offending object. You were absolutely no fun, my dear. Can't even allow an old man such as myself a little bit of eccentricity? It's one thing to be eccentric, Madara, it's another to be an asshole. Madara turned to Naruto and tossed his mask aside, allowing it to break against a tree. A black wraparound mask covered his face, revealing only his black eyes and the hair that protruded from the top. I'm not an asshole, boy. I just don't have the same set of values that you do. This village means nothing to me. This world means nothing. I aspire for something grander. I aspire for my own world, under my own rules. Naruto just held his hammer in his hand and gazed straight ahead. Without the chain to control his enormous block of steel, he wished to accomplish this alone. I aspire for a world of peace, without greedy old bastards such as yourself fucking everything up for the rest of us. Goodbye, Madara. It was not a pleasure knowing you. The ancient Uchiha heard footsteps behind him and shifted aside before he could respond. Kakuzu pushed past him and sucked on his chakra as she passed. He turned to Ten and gritted his teeth. You little bitch, he was about to say something else, but Ten danced back as Naruto charged forward and swung at him. Madara leapt back and turned to face them both. Damn you and your weapons. When I'm done with you two, I'll take those things and lock them in a dark room, far from where they can do me harm. Ten moved in once more and thrust Kakuzu at the Uchiha as Naruto spun away. Wincing as the sword tugged at his chakra once more, he growled as he ducked and knocked it away. Fine. We'll do it your way, children. As Sasuke was dragged deeper and deeper into the forest, he fought desperately to escape Itachi. When he eventually managed to free an arm, he grabbed his sword and stabbed Itachi in the back. When the clone poofed away and rolled to a stop at the edge of a small clearing, he hit the ground hard. Glancing out into the forest, the youngest Uchiha slowly stood up and put his sword away. You can come out. I know you're there. Itachi walked around the outside edge, keeping his gaze on Sasuke, and slowly stepped into the opening, his face grim. It was so simple, little brother. All you had to do was come before me with the same eyes as me and kill me to restore our clan's lost honor. That's all you had to do. With a sneer, Sasuke placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. That's what I've come to do, big brother. Once I've killed you, then our clan's honor will be restored. Sasuke was confused when Itachi let out a short, barking laugh. Sasuke kept turning slightly to face Itachi as he paced, his eyes hard on his brother. And what good is that honor when you have none of your own, little brother? Our clan comes from Konoha. We were born in Konoha, and we are ninja of Konoha. We are the last Uchiha. The volume of his voice increased steadily, and he paced more quickly. You were supposed to avenge our clan as a ninja of Konoha, not to follow in my exact footsteps and run to Orochimaru. Your vengeance means nothing. I killed the clan to protect Konoha. You were to be our salvation. Instead, you damned our clan to be a black mark on Konoha forever. After a moment of stunned silence, Sasuke growled and gestured to Itachi. How dare you speak such lies? How dare you speak as if you have the right to judge me? Your death will bring honor back to our name. Konoha will understand my reasons. Konoha will understand that you're a bloody traitor. If the Sandaime had lived, the truth might have been told to you in time. But you had no patience, using your own little pity party to give yourself excuses for what you've been doing, you insignificant little brat. Sasuke was shocked to see his brother furious with tears glistening in the corners of his eyes because he was accustomed to seeing him always calm and collected. The eyes you were supposed to bring before me were not the Mangekyo. They were supposed to be the eyes of sorrow and regret. I did what I did out of loyalty to my village. You did what you did out of a twisted perversion of revenge. As Sasuke started to unbutton his cloak, Itachi paused and turned to face him. It doesn't matter now though, little brother. I only have 2 fights left in my life. The one with you, and then the one with Naruto. And the one with Naruto will be with my new eyes. With a laugh, Sasuke withdrew his sword from its sheath. I've read those documents as well, Itachi. I don't have the Mangekyo, so my eyes are useless to you. Itachi, wearing his Anbu uniform with the Uchiha crest on the back, smiled and withdrew his own blade, putting aside his cloak as a horrifying chill ran up Sasuke's spine. Oh, there is more than one way to gain a Mangekyo, little brother. I've already achieved it, so that point is moot. Your eyes may not possess it, but with the mixture of my powers and your eyes, I should be able to achieve another level of Mangekyo. Either way, your eyes will not last long in your head. My face will be the last one you ever see." Feeling the cold steel enter his body, Sasuke gasped. Had he spent the whole time conversing with a genjutsu? As he studied the Itachi before him, the surprise gradually dwindled. "This isn't real," I said. "That is the authentic one, it's genjutsu." He glared at Itachi as the pain in his chest subsided with a small chakra pulse. "Parlor tricks, Itachi? I thought better of you." With their swords raised, the two prepared to fight. "You never knew the real me, Sasuke. Whatever you thought is inconsequential." By using their gift of sight to deflect all damaging blows away from themselves, the pain bodies were merely dodging. To keep things interesting, two of the bodies would alternate opponents every so often. For the Konoha ninja, it was especially annoying. Despite only having been engaged in combat for a minute, they appeared to be making no progress. Everyone, including Tsunade and what she believed to be the main body, stopped what they were doing when a significant power surge occurred. When she saw her former teammate, her eyes widened exponentially. Jiraiya. He was as tall as ever, but his entire manner had changed. Two toads, a male and a female, were perched on his shoulders and were arguing about what she was going to eat for supper that evening. His hands and feet resembled flippers, webbed and sharp, his hair shaggier, and his nose more bulbous. His eyes were sunken like a toad's, his teeth were sharper, and the marks on his face were more noticeable. She gave a little shiver. What had he done? She saw Jiraiya squat on his hands and knees, and then he was gone. The main body of pain flew back into the forest as the sound of a fist meeting jaw filled the air. Tsunade saw Jiraiya fall from the sky and squat next to her, staring up. "Go help the others. I'll take this one." He had jumped into the forest after it before she could object. She pivoted on her heel and lunged towards the closest corpse, barely escaping as it ducked. "That punch reminded me of my own. Jiraiya, what have you done to yourself?" At the moment, said Toad Sage was slowly stalking his victim while observing the pains return to its feet. "That was most inconvenient, Sensei. I don't appreciate you having done that. I don't appreciate what you've done with your life, Nagato. This isn't what I taught you to do. You were supposed to become a great man and help others. What you taught me were jutsu and the knowledge that there will always be pain in the world unless someone does something about it. Without people, there will be no pain. Thus, the world must be burnt to ashes so that a new world can rise like a phoenix from those ashes. And I will be that world's new god." Jiraiya exposed his teeth and shook his head, not wanting to interrupt. Ma and Pa said nothing. "I am so disappointed in you, Nagato, so very disappointed. And I, in you, Sensei." With a sigh, Ma squeezed Jiraiya's shoulder harder. "Hurry up, Jiraiya-chan, I've got supper waiting." "I will. I'm sorry for dragging you two into this." Pa used his webbed foot to strike Jiraiya in the side of the head. "Shut up, boy. If we didn't want to be here, we'd go back, and Ma, stop worrying about supper. It'll still be there. We gotta worry about this guy. It's hard being a housewife, you senile old fart. You try keeping supper warm every night. We've got bigger things to worry about than supper, damn it, woman. Both of you hush. We've got to take him down and then go help the others." The two toads spoke together as two fists struck Jiraiya's face on either cheek. "Shut up, you idiot," amused. Pain observed the two toads berating Jiraiya. "What's the matter, Sensei? Can't even control two little frogs." Together, the two toads ceased their yelling at Jiraiya and turned to face Pain. "Ma, I think supper's gonna be cold by the time we get back." "Yeah, Pa. It is. Not to worry, we can fry us up something to eat right here." Jiraiya prepared himself and grinned. "Pa, I'll supply the oil, you supply the flame. Jiraiya-chan, you fan them." Each of the three inflates and exudes their ingredients. A huge ball of fire ripped through the trees, burning everything in its path as it made its way directly to Pain. When he saw something leap in front of the massive ball of flame and hurtle out of the bushes next to him, Jiraiya arched an eyebrow because the man remained motionless. The other Pain absorbed the ball of flame, and his eyes, along with the toads, bulged. With a little huff, Tsunade and Kakashi landed on either side of Jiraiya. Tsunade gave Jiraiya a quick glance. Later, she would have to question him. "That asshole just took off running all of a sudden. We tried to catch him, but he was too fast. He's been absorbing everything I and the others throw at him." Jiraiya nodded and watched as Pain's two bodies stood next to each other. "I'd hoped to kill this one while he was separated from the others, but that's not to be, I see." Well, it's still 3-2, and he can't dodge everything. His head was struck by 2 fists. We're still here too, Jiraiya-chan. Of course, forgive me. The respect he showed the 2 toads caused Tsunade to raise an eyebrow. Gamabunta didn't even get that much respect. In preparation for what was to come, she cracked her knuckles. Let's see how far that all-encompassing eye can go, if they can only see what the others see. Kakashi revealed his Mangekyo Sharingan by raising his Hite.8. Then one of us will have to get behind them. Tsunade gave the copy ninja a fierce look. Stop finishing my sentences. Yes, Hokage. Sama. Madara whirled around once more, allowing his sword to collide with Tenten's and raising his leg to avoid a blow from Naruto's hammer. And there was that damned chain, which was a pain. He would need to be on the lookout for a feint from the lynx or himself if the boy approached. And his chakra continued to be drained by that damned feather. Even though it was a tiny pull, every little bit could make a difference. Despite his immortality, he was not a good chakra. He wasn't foolish. He was cautious to get to where he was. He flipped over to avoid the 2 warriors and inhaled deeply. I must keep these 2 apart. Together, they are too dangerous. He swiftly moved his gaze to the best vantage point and fixed it there. He sucked in a great deal of air and then quickly expelled it with a series of quick hand signals. Gukakyu no Jutsu. Tenten gritted her teeth and swung Keppaku like a baseball bat at the fireball, while Naruto leapt to the side to avoid being struck. Before the chakra was absorbed, it struggled against her for a brief moment. She barely lowered the sword enough to deflect a fist to her nose before she fell back into the trees. Tenten. Madara stepped in front of Naruto and kicked him in the stomach just as he was ready to run to her side. Naruto was jerked back to his feet and given the opportunity to kick out as the chain swung out and wrapped around Madara's chest. Naruto wasn't done, but Madara faded out as the kick went through his head. There was a sizzle, and the Uchiha looked down to see the tag fastened to the chain. Holding Keppaku in one hand and her bleeding nose in the other, Naruto staggered out of the bushes just as she was ready to run to Tenten. He felt a wave of relief when he realized she was all right. Tenten nodded succinctly and bounded back toward Madara. Glowering at the 2, the Uchiha stumbled a little and used his blade to block Keppaku. You 2 are the most inconvenient roadblocks I've ever come across, short of Senju Hashirama. I'll display your heads quite proudly beside my throne. Without uttering a word, Naruto charged forward once more, kicking, punching, and thrusting. When Madara sensed a pull on his chakra once more, he found comfort in the fact that they couldn't attack him without fear of harming the other. Tenten was standing behind him, grinning, when he glanced over his shoulder. The Uchiha snarled and focused intently. This was the best course of action, but it would hurt them all. As the familiar black flames began to rise from Madara's body, Naruto watched in terror. He attempted to jump back and alert Tenten, but they exploded outward, sending all 3 fighters flying backward. With his skin and clothing scorched, Naruto rose slowly to his feet. Everything was painful. The majority of the damage had been absorbed by his hammer, but it was not enough to shield him from everything. As he glanced across the clearing toward Tenten, he noticed that she was also slowly rising. She could still heft Keppaku despite having blackened arms. After taking the brunt of the attack and absorbing the majority of the chakra, the sword was also blackened. With a low chuckle, Madara slowly stood up as well, and the 2 warriors watched. You see, children, I may be old, but I have cunning, something that, sadly, you will never develop. You'll die today and I will raise Konoha to the ground. They all looked up when they heard a crackle of thunder, and Madara grinned as lightning smashed across the sky. See? Even the heavens weep for your deaths. The kami will not have its way today. I will emerge victorious. Gasping for breath, Naruto searched frantically for something to motivate him. He required a miracle. He glanced at his chain, then at his hammer, and back again. Then he realized. Electricity is conducted by metal. It was unlikely, but... His muscles screamed in protest as he stood up, and the chain hefted the hammer behind him, on his skin. The cool metal of the chain was both calming and painful. All he could do was hope. It was their final opportunity. As the 2 Uchiha engaged in combat, clangs echoed, and occasionally the only evidence of their collisions was the sparks from their swords. The blows were dynamic, and the speed was amazing. This was the battle of the century if both parties thought that only a Uchiha could murder another Uchiha. But Itachi had no such illusions. For this reason, he had chosen Naruto rather than Sasuke as his last fighter. After the initial barrage of blows, his expression had returned to its apathetic state and had stayed there ever since. Sasuke's expression was one of pure rage and hatred. On opposite sides of the clearing, the 2 paused and turned back to one another. Sasuke rushed forward once more and stabbed Itachi in the chest. When Sasuke grinned, the elder Uchiha pushed it away and his eyes widened just a bit. He fell to his knees as electricity flowed through his body. With a gleeful smile, Sasuke kicked Itachi in the ribs. Like that? That's my variation of the Chidori. I channeled the electricity through the blade. Hurts, doesn't it? With blood streaming from the corner of his mouth, Itachi glanced up at Sasuke. With a sneer, Sasuke pressed the blade against Itachi's neck. That's right. Grovel. Live miserably for the next few moments, live like. A blade pierced his stomach and twisted before he could finish. With a gasp, Sasuke glanced back and saw an expressionless Itachi. You talk too much. When the Sasuke in front of him melted away and a blade was inserted through his own shoulder, Itachi was not shocked. You take too much time. When Sasuke twisted the blade, the kneeling Itachi poofed itself out of existence. When the electricity flowed through Itachi, he screamed and winced. When Itachi looked up at him, Sasuke's eyes, which were ripe with madness, changed to ones of confusion. You used too many theatrics. As the clone detonated and he was hurled against a tree, Sasuke shielded his face and his sword embedded itself above his head. Taking a deep breath, he glanced across the clearing and saw Itachi coming straight at him, his eyes glimmering with his own insanity. Sasuke took a deep breath and swiftly flipped through the hand signs. Goryuka no Jutsu. Itachi was the target of the great dragon of fire, which roared into being. As the dragon soared overhead, singing his back and setting some of his hair on fire, the elder Uchiha fell to the ground. The dragon then rose to the heavens and burst out of existence with another deafening roar. Ignoring the stench of his burning hair, Itachi rolled to one side and crawled back to his feet. Your aim has not improved, little brother. When the first drop of rain touched Itachi's arm, he blinked and turned to face the sky, staring at the ominous clouds. He turned around to see Sasuke clambering slowly back up onto his feet. So, you heated the atmosphere. I assume this is another of your Raiden jutsus? Sasuke spread his legs and grinned. He would likely be exhausted by this, but Itachi could not avoid it. Not with its extensive scope. Something like that. I call it, Kirin. As the lightning flashed and thunder rolled, Itachi raised an eyebrow. Such a strange name. As the lightning started to converge overhead, Sasuke's eyes flashed. I see your death with these eyes. Itachi stood motionless, a ghost of a smile on his lips as the lightning lit up his face. What you see with your eyes is an illusion, and then the lightning struck. Tsunade had crushed the fat Pain's head, causing it to lie dead. Without a brain, nothing, not even Pain, could live. The three Konoha ninja surrounded the one in the Yahiko body, who stood stoically. Even if you defeat me here, I have other bodies. I will simply retreat and retrieve them. I am a god. I cannot be beaten. Even now, my other bodies are still well. Your ninja are no match for me. Jiraiya looked at Kakashi and Tsunade. You two go help the others. I can manage this one body. Make sure the others do not escape, no matter what. When instructed what to do, Tsunade snarled, and Kakashi nodded his head. In an instant, both vanished, sprinting back to assist the others. Jiraiya kept his gaze fixed on Pain. There's a reason the other bodies don't talk, why only one of you talk at a time. It's the reason you usually attack in groups. And what would that be, Sensei? Your consciousness can only be in one body at a time. The others are on autopilot. And you have to be close to transfer your consciousness from one body to the next. That's why you're at a disadvantage here. Pain gave a head nod. That may be true, but you don't have what it takes to kill me. You can't kill a god. You're not a god, Pain. You're immortal playing at one. Jiraiya dropped to his hands and knees and allowed the natural energy to flow through him. But he had to allow it to change him more and more. He required the strength to demolish this abomination in front of him. Ma watched in horror as Jiraiya's nose widened and lengthened. Pa yelled at him. Jiraiya. Stop. It's too dangerous. No. Must. Kill him. Jiraiya was starting to have trouble talking. He'd better get this over with. He gave Pain a fierce look before growling and vanishing. Expecting a charge from behind, Pain spun around and felt a forceful blow to his spine that almost broke it. A punch to the stomach stopped him again as he crashed into the trees. When Pain opened his eyes after coughing up blood, he saw Jiraiya standing above him with his hands clasped together. They descended and pounded Pain to the floor. Two Peens hurried toward the power surge that everyone had experienced, while the other four froze in their battles. As soon as they vanished into the darkness, they shot back out in all directions. Kakashi followed closely behind Tsunade as she emerged from the forest, cracking her knuckles. Don't let them into that forest. Keep them here. Despite their weariness and fatigue, The Konoha ninja nodded their heads and intensified their efforts against the Peens. Lee and Guy leapt after Tsunade as he kicked one into the air. Jiraiya, hurry up. Act quickly. Pain struggled back to his feet after coughing up blood once more. He sensed the other body's desperation as they attempted, and failed, to get to him. Was this really it? Was this his way of passing in this world as a god? Jiraiya landed squarely in the middle of his spine, causing a sharp pain that snapped him back to reality. Jiraiya kept slipping away and giving in to nature, so Ma and Pa desperately tried to get him to wake up. Taking a deep breath, the Toad Sage backed up and stepped off Pain's back. He gradually returned to his typical Sennin mode state. There was a significant drain on his energy. He had one last thing to do before he was gone for days. He approached the prone Pain slowly and peered down at him. So, you would burn the world to ashes? A fitting end. Let it never be said that destiny does not have a sense of irony. You started with tears of sorrow, my young pupil, and now your life will end due to your flames of bitterness. Pain observed as Jiraiya, Ma, and Pa all puffed up, signifying the impending fire. He trembled with fear and powerlessness, and his teeth tightened in rage. You can't do this. I am Pain. I am a god. This world deserves to know what true pain is. Jiraiya would have given his former pupil one final piece of advice, but all that came out of his mouth were flames. He watched as Pain screamed in pain before his cries subsided as Ma and Pa added the fuel. Reverting to his normal self, Jiraiya fell back against a tree and collapsed. The world knew Pain, Nagato. You just refused to see it. When he heard the thunder roll and saw the lightning strike, he looked up. His eyes shut in fatigue, and all he could hope was that it wasn't someone he cared about. Before they left, Ma and Pa made sure he was still alive. After all, dinner was getting cold. As the chain came to life, Naruto dragged the hammer behind it and rushed across the ground. Because he was so preoccupied with the sky, Madara didn't hear the lynx approaching him until they had bound him by wrapping them around his arms. He fought to break free but was restrained. Then, as though charmed by someone, the end of the chain with the hammer started to snake upward until it pointed directly into the sky. When Madara realized what it was doing, his eyes widened, and he started to struggle more. Naruto was unable to sustain his chakra for very long because of the Amaterasu and his body's need for rapid healing. When Madara felt arms encircling him and that crazy pull on his chakra once more, he was nearly free. His head turned to see Tenten, grim-faced, holding him. With a look of pure horror on his face, Naruto started to stagger forward. His throat had caught when he attempted to call out. She mouthed the words, "I love you," and closed her eyes as the lightning struck, but he managed to get Tenten's attention. As the two ensnared in the electrical current screamed to the sky, Naruto collapsed to his knees, his hands limp. Not even Uchiha Madara could withstand that shock. In a split second, it was over, and Tenten's arms let go of Madara as she fell to the ground, Keppaku falling next to her, still in her hand. Madara rolled onto his back after landing hard on the side. The hammer was pulled back to Naruto as the chain slipped out from under him. Taking it in his hand, he staggered over to Tenten, lifted her up, and held her against his chest. He tried to wish away the emptiness in his heart by clinging to her as the tears started to fall. Now was not the time for it to end. He had to keep Tenten with him. She had too. He was startled out of his daze by a low laugh behind him, and he slowly got up, allowing his beloved's body to lie on the ground once more. The sky had returned to its grayish-blue color, and Uchiha Madara gazed up at it. He found it strange that two teenage fanatics would defeat him after he had come so far. When he saw Naruto's expression, his laughter intensified. "What's the matter, boy? Did your girlfriend bite the bullet? That's a shame. She was a beauty." Behind him, Naruto's wings flared as he ground his teeth. As he readied himself to deliver the final blow, his hammer was raised above his head. Madara just stared back into the boy's ethereally glowing, now silver eyes. "You took away my Tenten. You took away the one person to ever make me truly happy. You're guilty of destroying my happiness." Madara closed his eyes and spit up blood that coagulated behind his mask as he laughed once more. "I don't care." With a cry of anguish and frustration, Naruto slammed the hammer down on Madara's head. The sacred weapon dropped out of his grasp. He was indifferent to the mess he had created. The fact that his mission from Kami was over didn't matter to him. His beloved's presence at his feet was all that mattered to him. He took a seat next to her and drew her back into his embrace while petting her hair and cleaning her face of the blood. Tears started to fall, and he let out a low whisper. "Tenten. Why? Why did you leave me?" Sasuke watched in complete bewilderment as his attack veered off course and landed almost a mile away, leaving him and an amused Itachi standing there with almost no chakra left. He was so tired that he fell to his knees. Looks like destiny holds no love for you, Sasuke. That, or your aim leaves much to be desired. No matter. It all ends here. I don't even have to risk exposing some of my bigger secrets to the one I would fight. The younger Uchiha started to crab-walk backward as he stepped menacingly towards Sasuke, and Itachi's grin grew more twisted and maniacal. Now then. Let's proceed with the operation. There will be no anesthetic for you though. I want to hear you scream in an unsightly manner. And as Sasuke's eyes were removed one by one, the air was filled with his cries. Tsunade was pleased to see Pain's bodies fall to the ground, their connection to the outside world severed. All she could hope for was that Jiraiya had survived. She pivoted on her heel and fled back into the forest as the other ninja recovered, closely trailed by Sakura and Kakashi, who realized they would need her to aid in their recovery. The smell of cooking flesh sickened her more the closer she came to where they had left Jiraiya. All she could do was hope Jiraiya didn't get flash fried. When she saw him leaning against a tree with his chin resting against his chest, her heart skipped a beat. She swiftly landed next to him and felt for his pulse with her fingers on his neck. She let out a shuddering sigh. He was tired, but alive. Pakun was called forth by Kakashi, who instructed him to look for Naruto and Tenten. The small pug took off right away. Tsunade and Sakura assisted Kakashi in adjusting Jiraiya as he leaned over to place him on his back. Shortly after, Pakun returned and reported that he had located Naruto nearby. They all started right away. Regardless of what they had anticipated discovering in that clearing, Naruto was not sobbing over Tenten's prone body, with his hammer driven into the spot where Madara's head had been. The boy's cries were heartbreaking and defamatory. Tears gathered at the corners of Sakura's eyes, and she covered her mouth with her hand. Not daring to look at his upset pupil, Kakashi had bowed his head. He could tell Jiraiya was awake by a shifting from his back. Put me down. I need to see to him. Kakashi dropped to his knees and released Jiraiya from his back. Despite the fact that she was barely able to see through the tears, Tsunade put his arm around her shoulder and they started to approach him. When both of them put their arms around Naruto's shoulders, he looked up at them helplessly and started crying again. His shoulders trembled as his sobs tore through Tenten's body, crushing it to his more. Why? Tenten's eyes scanned the whiteness surrounding her. Occasionally, she would notice a dark patch, but they were infrequent. Her eyes began to well up with tears as she blinked. Without giving it any thought, she had abandoned Naruto alone. It hurt more than she had anticipated, but oh, the sense of emptiness. She turned to see Kami shaking her head after hearing a sigh behind her. Tenten. Whatever am I going to do with you two? With a sniffle, Tenten threw herself at the woman, embracing her and sobbing into her shoulder. She would have felt ashamed of her actions at any other time, but at that moment, she simply needed someone to lean on. As she gave her a back pat, Kami heard her babbling and gurgling incoherently. After a few minutes, she smiled at Tenten with that always kind grin and held her back by her shoulders. Why are you so unhappy, Tenten? I lost Naruto. Oh, nonsense. You've done no such thing. Where do you think you are right now? Tenten sniffed once more after taking a moment to look around. Either heaven or hell, and I doubt it's hell. Kami gave a headshake. You're in neither. You're in the place where those between life and death go. Tenten's gaze expanded. You mean, that's right. You're not dead. I brought you here to tell you that yours and Naruto's journey is almost at an end. Tenten gave a headshake. What do you mean? With a joyful sigh, Kami gave the girl a shoulder pat. It means that I'll have 2 more angels in my court. Naruto only has one final battle, one final task I've given him. Angel. With a nod, Kami extended her hand over Tenten's shoulder. When she touched, a wing? The girl shuddered. Sacrifice is noble, and you were already an angel of mine. This just got you your wings. Kami leaned forward and kissed the girl's forehead, causing Tenten to start crying once more. Now then, you need to go back to the realm of the living for a little bit longer. Naruto is most distraught right now. Be sure to tell him how much you love him. I'll see the 2 of you soon. Tenten nodded her head in agreement, sniffling and grinning. Thank you, Kami. Sama. I'm eternally grateful. As the girl vanished, Kami waved and grinned. Young love, I said. Capable of surpassing even death. At last, Jiraiya and Tsunade had succeeded in removing Naruto from Tenten and regaining his footing. Everyone was devastated to see the angelic boy so depressed, and he was still blubbering. Before Kakashi picked Tenten up and watched her glow, Naruto gave her one final glance. Kakashi, not knowing what was going on, jumped back by the others. With Kapaku still in her hands, they watched as she started to float above the ground, her hair flailing and her buns popping out. Wide-eyed, they all watched as her shirt was torn apart by the white, brown, tipped wings that exploded from her back. She then slowly descended back to the ground, folding her wings behind her like a pillow. When Naruto's eyes fluttered open and she turned to face him, his mouth started to open and he started crying again. "Naruto!" He threw himself at her, rocking back and forth as he cradled her and started crying into her shoulder. Ten wrapped her arms around his torso and lay there, enjoying the intimacy despite her exhaustion. She looked drowsily up into Naruto's eyes and grinned as he repeatedly muttered, "I love you. I love you too." The two angelic figures clung to each other while the assembled ninja watched with joy, simultaneously laughing and crying. When Itachi entered the clearing, dragging his now dead brother and with blood in his eyes, everyone froze. He glanced back at Tsunade after glancing at the two angels. "I'll come for him when I'm ready. Tell him to be prepared." Sasuke's face was contorted into a terrible final image of shock and horror as the ninjas all watched him. They all turned to see Itachi leaving, his eye sockets empty. So he had done it. In fact, he had removed his own brother's eyes. How twisted natural law is. Reluctantly, Tsunade watched him limp out of the clearing, his clearly exhausted body stumbling occasionally. When Ten blushed and looked down at herself, she laughed heartily. "What happened to my shirt?" Happy that she was still alive to notice, Naruto pulled her in and gave her a cheek kiss while laughing. They had all the time in the world now, and tomorrow would be another day. Sanosuke and Kami watched above them, grinning slightly. "They're really something else, aren't they? You should be more than proud to have such wonderful warriors." Grinning, she turned to face the four souls that the Shinigami had imprisoned behind her. She glared at them, her jovial smile hardening. "Wouldn't you four agree?" Fearful looks were their only response. After all, it was not a desirable situation to be at Kami's mercy. The Shinigami licked its lips in anticipation of its upcoming meal. The news that their greatest enemies and greatest embarrassments were now dead had everyone in Konoha in a festive mood. Toasts were made everywhere, and glasses clinked in congratulations. On top of the Hokage monument, however, were two figures whose wings billowed behind them, catching the breeze as it blew by. Naruto turned to Ten and gave her a huge embrace. "Well, my angel, only one thing is left to do and then, I don't know what happens, but at least I still have you." Ten put her head on his chest and gazed out over the village while grinning at him. "We'll always have each other," Kami promised that, forever. Both angels' wings spread as the tingling sensation spread through their bodies as Naruto pulled her up for a kiss. Forever. 5 years went by as if they didn't exist. In Konoha, everything calmed down once more, and everyone's lives returned to normal. Everyone lived in prosperity during that time. It was a peaceful period. Particularly for two unique individuals. Over the years, Naruto and Ten had loved life and each other. They had greeted every morning as though it were their last since they had no idea when Itachi would arrive. They tried to share their happiness with others and lived life to the fullest. After that day, the so-called Angels of Konoha never left the village. They played and imparted knowledge to children during their time there. All but the most obstinate Konoha residents adored them. They would get up every morning and walk around. Instruction. He was preparing for the day he would return. Ten would subject Naruto to a tortuous regime, doing everything in her power to keep him alert. He would have to continue fighting while constantly dodging Kapaku's lethal sharpness after she had nearly depleted him. They rehearsed fighting without glancing at the hands and eyes of their adversaries, because Naruto had previously been snared by Itachi when he had looked at his finger. He focused his attention on the feet and only the feet. At first, it was challenging, but he eventually figured it out. If Itachi hadn't developed new tricks, he wouldn't get him on that account. Naruto was certain that he had. His own toolkit had expanded somewhat. He was as effective with his hammer as he would ever be. His chain no longer needed any consideration. It was an extension in and of itself. It moved on its own initiative, propelled by his subconscious thought. Sharpening those skills wasn't necessary. But his proficiency in the ninja arts did. He and Ten spent a lot of time with Guy, Kakashi, Jiraiya, and any other sensei who was willing to teach them. They gained a lot of knowledge. Jutsu, Genjutsu for Ten, proper posture for Taijutsu, how to dispel them for Naruto, and medical jutsu were also covered. 5 years of education. 5 years of stress-free living. Playing in the park with the kids was the high point of the two of them's day after all the training and studying was finished. The most depressing day of their lives was when they discovered that Ten and Naruto were both unable to conceive after the first year of trying. The village children filled the void left by the death of a family's dreams there and then. They were a mainstay at the orphanage, but they never adopted because they had no idea if they would survive to see tomorrow. At the moment, they were sitting on a park bench amid a crowd of kids of all sizes, shapes, skin tones, and genders. The two angels ruffled their wings and grinned at the joyful tykes, eliciting laughter from their tiny entourage. "Tell us a story. Tell us a story." With a laugh, Naruto leaned back on the bench and wrapped his right arm around Tenten's back, grazing her wing. She stifled a sigh and shuddered. They hadn't spent much time together alone lately, so even a small, tender touch sent shivers down her spine. As he spoke to the kids, Naruto pretended not to notice. "All right then. Which one of us do you want to tell a story?" Tenten-san. He touched her wing once more and smirked as he saw her tremble and glare at him before grinning at the kids. "How would you all like to hear a story about my old teammate Lee and Guy, sensei?" When the two eccentric shinobi were mentioned, the children cheered, even though they had never seen the two green-clad ninja. The park and orphanage were aware of their exploits. Fortunately, the kids had never laid eyes on the two. Well, this one-time Guy, sensei and Lee, the last time he had seen anyone he knew was years ago. It had been years since he had spoken to anyone. He had been on this path for years. He killed his brother years ago. Years have passed since his new eyes took root. He hadn't seen the one person tying him to this world for years. He returned to Konoha by walking the path that would either bring him salvation or damnation, but he didn't care. At the end of this walk, Uzumaki Naruto was waiting for him. The gates, those massive wooden gates that signaled his arrival at his fate, the battle he craved, the end of the road, were now visible to him. In order to catch his breath, he paused. He was becoming overwhelmed by the excitement. His chest was swelled with anxiety, which would overwhelm him if he wasn't careful. Even if the proposal was exciting, he couldn't afford to get too excited. The only sound revealing his presence was the crunch of gravel on the road beneath his sandals. He was aware that his presence could spark a riot. Excellent. He desired attention. He had been hiding and training until he was exhausted for 5 years before he felt prepared. All he could do was hope Naruto had been training too. As he emerged from the darkness, the figure was illuminated by sunlight that filtered through the leaves that bordered the path. Even though his clothes were still ripped and tattered from all those years ago, he was proudly wearing the Uchiha crest on his back. He retained a portion of his Akatsuki identity. His ring was still on his finger, and the gray leggings were still on his legs. These aspects of his history were equally significant as his slashed Konoha headband or the Uchiha crest. He was unable to release them. He was defined by them. His past was cloaked in death, betrayal, misery, and disdain. Knowing that his presence would cause chaos in the village, he sighed as he walked toward the gates. The Chunin who saw him merely blinked, not immediately recognizing him. Name and reason for visiting. Uchiha Itachi. I'm here for Naruto. Tell him I await his arrival. The time has come. With wide eyes, the Chunin dropped the clipboard he was holding and staggered back before running into the village. With a sigh, Itachi picked up the clipboard and thumbed through the log. He turned to see another person sitting on the counter of the hut and coming toward the gates. He picked up a pen and spoke calmly to the man. Name and reason for visiting. And that's why you should never give Lee alcohol. The children silently vowed to keep an eye out for such a dangerous lunatic as they gaped at the story of one of Lee's drunken outbursts. Ten stood up from the bench, letting her wings spread out behind her and stretching her arms as she laughed at their gaping. Her back cracked and her feathers fluttered a little, and she let out a moan. She smiled as she pushed the kids away after opening her eyes and staring at them once more. Lunch wasn't going to buy itself, after all. As he watched the children leave, Naruto stood up as well, easing the kinks in his neck and back. Knowing that he and Tenten would never experience the happiness of returning home to their own children made it always sad to watch them go. Tenten put her arms around his waist after hearing him sigh. It's not good to dwell on things that can't be done, Naruto. He put his arm around her shoulder, their wings touching, and grinned down at her. I know. But I had always hoped that we could leave a legacy behind in Konoha. We've been so blessed, I just always hoped that we could, be parents. Tenten started guiding him toward the restaurant area, away from the park. He might get out of his funk by going to Ichiraku's. He thought about what might have been too much at times, not that she hadn't also desired children. A young boy and girl to share her love of pointed objects with, teach, and love. They both gave absent-minded nods to passers-by as they went by. Even after 5 years, Naruto still flinched when an adult villager approached too closely because he wasn't accustomed to being admired. He was never bothered by children, but he was always suspicious of adults. When they arrived at Ichiraku's, they placed their customary order. After a brief conversation with them, Ayame went to assist her father in preparing the ramen. Even though Tucci was in his later years, he was still capable of cooking. When Naruto looked around and shivered abruptly, Tenten raised an eyebrow at him. What's the matter? He shook himself to get rid of the goosebumps that had appeared and looked at her gravely. Just a bad feeling, like something from our past is coming back. She inhaled deeply and raised her gaze to the heavens. It was too lovely and blue to be a bad day. Tsunade had been taking a pleasant little snooze. She had been trying to get some rest from drinking some sake. She had known that Jiraiya was sitting on the couch nearby, scrawling in his notebook, and that her shirt was on the verge of falling open. Jiraiya's presence didn't matter to her. He was merely keeping an eye on her, and it wasn't as though he hadn't witnessed her girls in recent years acting freely thanks to her shirt. Some old habits simply never go away. When her door slammed open and a panicked Chunin ran in, she had just reached the point where the real world no longer mattered and had buried her face in a pile of papers. Hokage. Sama. Urgent news. With a sigh, Tsunade slowly lifted her head from the desk and glared at the Chunin while keeping her shirt in mind and crossing her arms over her still remarkably large chest. This had better be something about the sky falling or someone needing their head pulled out of their ass. The Chunin stood up and gave a salute. Hi, Hokage. Sama. Uchiha Itachi has returned and he demands Uzumaki Naruto at the gate. Immediately, Tsunade leapt to her feet, and Jiraiya followed suit. Where is he? Naruto or Itachi? Either one. Left Itachi at the gate, and I don't know where Naruto is. The poor man cowered under Tsunade's blazing gaze as she gritted her teeth and glared at him. You idiot. Why in the hell did you leave a dangerous criminal alone at the gates? I panicked. I've never been up against someone as powerful as him. To calm herself, Tsunade inhaled deeply. We'll talk about you conduct later. For now, we find Naruto. Jiraiya? I'm on my way. Tsunade grabbed her jacket off its hook and put it on as soon as the elderly toad sage vanished. She glared at the Chunin once more before opening the door. You're coming with me. We're going to see Itachi. We have a stop to make on the way though. The Chunin gave a forceful nod and sank behind her. Hi, Hokage. Sama. With a groan, Naruto leaned back on the stool and allowed the ramen to settle and start to digest. Tenten grinned and gave his stomach a forceful slap, creating a loud popping sound. Naruto gave her a playful glare and grunted. What was that for? You're getting fat. Starting tomorrow, we're eating at other restaurants for lunch. Naruto crossed his arms and protruded his lower lip. I am not fat. And I'll have you know that even if I was, I could still take you out. I said you were getting fat, not that you were. And eating ramen every day isn't good for you. You need to eat other things and so do I. I don't wanna. They turned to see Ayame, who was observing them with her chin in her hands and a nostalgic smile on her face, after hearing a sigh from behind the counter. You two make such a cute couple. I wish I could find someone. Tenten gave Naruto another belly smack while giggling. Well, when you do find someone, don't pick someone who eats all the time. This one'll catch up to Choji pretty soon if he keeps it up. Jiraiya landed outside the stand and grabbed the blonde's arm before Naruto could respond. Come on, brat, we gotta go. Naruto jerked the older man's arm away and retreated against him. Hold up a second. What's the rush? Itachi's back and he wants you. He's at the gate. Naruto sprang to his feet, toppled his stool, and hid beneath the flaps. Jiraiya saw the older man on the ground following the blonde as he bowed low and leapt into the air, his wings spreading as he took off and ran for the gate. After a moment of stunned sitting on her stool, Tenten went outside and threw herself into the air. As she trailed behind Naruto, unexpected tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She had hoped that Itachi had just vanished after all these years, but now he had appeared out of nowhere. She inhaled deeply as her gaze returned to the sky. Today was so ideal. Another merchant approached the gate, and Itachi wrote down his name and wished him a good day. It had been a while since he had just sat down and had a good time like this. Details like his ragged appearance, his slashed Hide.8, and the Uchiha crest on his back were completely ignored by the civilians. He could easily kill them. Behind him, off to one side, he sensed a familiar face, but he chose to just act the part. Right now, it was crucial to keep things cool. He was not yet ready to instigate a riot. Name and reason for leaving? I see you've inundated yourself quite nicely into Konoha society, Itachi-san. It's been almost 2 decades since you had Chunin duties, hasn't it? Itachi turned his head and calmly put down the clipboard. Indeed. After years of nothing but life. Threatening tasks, I find mundane and simple things relaxing. I have to say that it was nice of you to let me do this. Hokage. Sama. Tsunade placed her hands on her hips and watched intently as Itachi turned to face her after getting off the counter. He followed her gaze as she raised an eyebrow at his unkempt appearance. Ah, my state of dress. Admittedly, I have not taken very good care of my clothing. Or your hair. It's really long now. Appearances are inconsequential. Where is he? Tsunade grimaced, praying that no one had already brought up that topic. Jiraiya has gone to fetch him. We haven't forgotten the bargain between you two. I see. A breeze blew across the ground, raking up the dirt and churning it around, and they were silent for a while. Tsunade reached into her jacket pocket and snapped her fingers. Here. I retrieved this for you. I thought you might like to have it, seeing as this will be your last day alive. Itachi accepted the bundle coolly and grinned a little. And how do you know I'm going to be the one dying? Either way, you'll die today. By Naruto's hand or my own. Your deeds against Konoha are entirely too many. You've brought this on yourself. With a small gasp, Itachi opened the package and nodded his head. He held it up to the light with reverence, spinning it around and observing how the light reflected off its gold surface. He sighed with a shudder and gave Tsunade a nod. Thank you. You have no idea how much this means to me. She glanced at the plain gold band and nodded thoughtfully. The ring was the wedding band of his mother, Makoto. After the Uchiha lands and properties were put up for auction, it was one of the few items she had managed to save. She was relieved that she hadn't sold that straightforward little ring because it hadn't seemed right. Even Itachi deserved to have a peaceful moment in life. She saw him remove his necklace, put the ring on it, tie it up again, and tuck it back into his shirt. Tsunade, the doctor in her, was intrigued by the tiny patch of red at the corner of his right eye. Do they bleed when you're sad? With a nod, Itachi's head abruptly raised to the sky. Knowing that one of her favorite people might be dying, Tsunade closed her eyes and prayed in silence. Less than a second later, Jiraiya stopped next to her, and Naruto landed next to her. Tenten landed a few seconds later and stood next to Naruto, securely gripping his arm. Itachi focused only on Naruto, ignoring the others. It's good to see you again, Naruto.kun. I trust you've been well? Naruto gave Itachi a scowl. I was doing good until you showed up. My life these past 5 years has been wonderful. Then you have no regrets? Only that you choose to continue this? Itachi gave a nod and gradually closed his eyes. He had a new Sharingan spinning when he opened them, with an infinity sign spinning among the red iris. Then I have no regrets as well. Itachi's sword was thrusting for his chest and out in a heartbeat. While his chain attempted to impale Itachi, Naruto's hammer materialized out of thin air and blocked the blow, knocking it aside. With a defensive stance, the Uchiha leapt back outside Konoha's gates. Naruto whirled on his heel, drew Tenten close, and kissed her so intensely that she gasped. I love you, Ten-chan. Before she could reply, all of the Konoha ninja leapt onto the wall as the clangs resounded. Nobody would want to miss this battle. As he watched Naruto approach him, Itachi composed himself. This was it at last, the moment when his full potential would be assessed. When the boy struck him with the hammer, he was taken aback and amazed at the force of the blow. It felt like the weight of an elephant slamming into you. Itachi's feet dug holes in the ground as he was pushed back, his teeth clenched. With a quick thought, he shifted his weight to one side, allowing the sword to slid into Naruto's left arm and drag around the hammer's body. When the resistance departed, the blonde stumbled and clung to his arm while Itachi, with the wound already healing, picked himself up. It seems I have drawn first blood, Naruto.kun. So it would seem. The end of Naruto's chain repeatedly struck Itachi as it swung across the ground and rose up like a cobra. With practiced ease, he deflected every blow, making an effort to keep Naruto in sight the entire time. He heard air being displaced, and he immediately leapt into the air, dodging the hammer once more. Naruto charged up a Rasengan and thrust it into Itachi's chest while he watched him fall. When Itachi exploded and blew away most of the nearby trees and vegetation, his eyes widened. Tenten was nervously biting her fingernails on the wall, wondering what had happened to Naruto. Shortly after, Itachi and Naruto appeared from opposite sides of the forest, providing the answer to her unasked question. Naruto spun the hammer in his hands after the chain pulled it back to him. Examining the crater where the two clones had been, Itachi took his sword out once more. I see you've improved vastly with your Kage Bunshin. I didn't see you make the switch. With a grunt, Naruto grabbed some shuriken from his pouch. I didn't see you make a swap either. Are we through warming up now? I should say so, yes. My muscles should be loosened now. Good. After standing still for a while, the two rushed forward once more, steel on steel. Tsunade scowled upon the wall. She had not been prepared for this. It's like they're playing with one another. Why don't they actually fight? Jiraiya folded his arms and sighed. They're feeling each other out. Make no mistake though, they've been fighting to kill the entire time. Then how did Itachi manage to draw blood and Naruto didn't? Itachi never truly drew blood. That was a clone. They've been standing back observing each other since the beginning. Tsunade scowled and raised an eyebrow. And you know all this how? Jiraiya smiled as she turned to face the battlefield. I'm Naruto's teacher and I've fought Itachi before. Believe me, they're serious, but cautious. Itachi wants it to last as long as possible. After deflecting a final blow from the hammer, Itachi leapt back once more, separating himself from Naruto. He left his arms hanging at his sides and sheathed his sword. Have your skills improved any beyond that of hand.to? Hand combat? Have you become more adept at the art of ninjutsu? With his chain swishing in front of him, Naruto continued to hold his hammer by his side. He would not give up his weapon. I'm adequate. I believe you'll like the challenge. Before Naruto spoke, the two exchanged glances once more. Why do you keep stopping and talking, Itachi? Were you lonely these 5 years? With a sigh, Itachi slowly raised his hands. Lonely? Of course. I've been lonely since the night I left Konoha. I just like to chat with an equal in between blows. You can grant me that right? You're ruining my concentration, Itachi grinned. You've never concentrated a day in your life, and that will be your undoing. The man was left alone in the clearing as Naruto watched him explode into a cloud of crows. Without moving, he scanned his surroundings, attempting to predict Itachi's location. His experience with Kurenai and Ino would be useful in this situation. He didn't want to let Itachi know he was on his game, but he also couldn't let himself be influenced. When Sasuke emerged from the forest and strode toward him, his eyes widened slightly. HN. Loser. Idiot. Wimp. Doby. You let me die. You let Itachi kill me. Keeping his eyes forward, Naruto allowed his chain to keep an eye out for Itachi's attacks. I didn't let you die. You killed yourself when you abandoned all of us. Sasuke grinned, that grating grin that Naruto always found annoying. Then why are you speaking to a dead man? Because the living man would rather hide behind illusions than reveal himself. Itachi reappeared after Sasuke faltered and vanished into the wind. I thought that would have unsettled you. Your brother and I weren't exactly on good terms, ever. Itachi gave a sympathetic nod of his head. My attempt was a pathetic one. Future efforts, though, will be made with greater zeal. 3 Itachis rushed him from the front, making advanced hand signs as the chain blocked his sword from behind, and Naruto cursed. Jutsu no Gukaku. Quickly thinking, Naruto slammed his hammer as hard as he could into the ground, flinging himself to the ground and throwing up a shower of dirt. The flames struck the dirt wall and burst into a white-hot ball of fire, and Naruto sped away from the crater he had made, looking around to see Itachi holding his forehead as the chain went through his forehead with the sword. That blow was not appreciated by my Kage Bunshin. Alright, then. Let's examine your ninjutsu in its true form. Since he would need his hands free for this, Naruto let his chain grab hold of the hammer. Itachi flashed through hand seals once more, and Naruto waited to see what he would do. Since fire was Itachi's element, his wind jutsu were out, and he was about to be hit by another fireball. His chain threw the hammer at the center of the flame, which Itachi barely avoided as it flew past him and knocked out a few dozen trees. Itachi, who had been training with Jiraiya and Kakashi non-stop, was sent back on the defensive when Naruto came at him with a Rasengan in both hands. He shunshined away just as Naruto came crashing down, blowing away more of the forest. He stopped a good distance away, observing the damage they'd already caused, nearly a quarter-acre of forest demolished, several craters, and shot back toward Naruto as the young man started to stand. A phantom pain shot through Naruto's chest as he slowly stood up, and when he looked down, he saw Itachi's blade protruding from his chest. He inhaled deeply and jerked back, startling Itachi and putting his arm around his head before launching himself forward, slamming Itachi to the ground and pinning him with his wings as he slid the sword out of his chest, quickly healing the wound. After puffing for a while, Naruto put the sword to Itachi's throat and extracted some blood. You're not the real Itachi. Naruto scowled as the sword vanished as well, and he turned around, having finished playing around. His wings flared behind him, and he leapt into the air, leaving the hammer and chain on the ground. He thrust the sword downward, and the Kage Bunshin vanished, a hole in its throat. After talking to Temari a few times, he had the idea, and his wings started beating harder and harder as he hovered several feet above the ground. Most Fudan jutsu required a conduit, something to direct the wind, and he didn't have a fan. He did, however, have some enormous wings. Itachi, who had witnessed this kind of behavior with wind users in Suna, was hiding in the trees when he saw Naruto start to beat his wings, the air rippling around them. Kamikaze Gufu. It was frightening that Naruto had come that far. He was a formidable force with his own natural conduit for his element, and Itachi hurried away from the massive wind vortex that ripped through the forest, flinging trees everywhere. Now he sat on a treetop almost a mile away, staring back at the dust cloud that had formed in the shape of Naruto flapping in the air, searching for him, knowing that if he was careful, he could sneak up and get him, or he could be reckless. He took a deep breath and jumped out of the tree, running back to the clearing. As his chain slithered back to him and he handed back his hammer, Naruto landed in the center of the fallen forest, looking around him, knowing that Itachi was not present and that the man could not have been killed by that, not with Amaterasu at his disposal. A platoon of Itachis engulfed Naruto, who struggled to stay upright as he waited for the men to approach and smiled as shuriken exploded out of the forest and multiplied into thousands, tearing through his clothes and the feathers on his wings. Kaboom! Itachi's lips curled slightly as he and Naruto appeared on opposite sides of the smoke column as a violent explosion tore through the area, scattering the clones in a pillar of smoke. You seem to have mastered one of my favorite jutsu techniques. However, I don't believe that jutsu will help us defeat one another. Maybe we should return to taijutsu and kenjutsu? I will take any necessary action to ensure my survival. Itachi, I don't want to die for you. In the beginning, I didn't want this. I understand. However, I needed it. I must know how far I am capable of going, and you'll assist me in doing it. The blonde whirled around, searching for a way out, and was about to jump when Itachi strode forward, his eyes bleeding, and drew his sword. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, the Mangekyo was spinning. Itachi breathed heavily, and the infinity sign started to spin faster and faster. The black flames of Amaterasu rushed from him and formed a huge ring around him and Naruto. Avoid attempting to fly. If you do, I'll burn you. We will either fall together or only one of us will survive this place. With a grim nod, Naruto twirled his hammer and realized that, despite knowing what would happen, he would have to use all of his punches. He took a deep breath and hurried for the Uchiha, where sparks flew once more. Ten closed her eyes, afraid to look, and clasped her hands together in prayer, praying with all her strength that Naruto would survive this ordeal. She watched in horror as the black flames rose and surrounded the two, and she started to cry. Ten felt a hand comb run calmingly through her hair and looked up to see Kami looking at her with a kind expression, but she never saw Sanosuke and Kami appear on either side of her, watching the fight with great interest. Don't be concerned, he will be alright, I promise it. In less than 4 seconds, Naruto launched an attack that included parry, thrust, roll to the side, sweep kick, parry, swing and a miss, roll backward, leap forward, and slam down. As the fight continued, Itachi's smile only widened, each blow landed and blocked, solidifying his choice of Naruto as his opponent. Itachi stumbled back and stopped on one knee, the air knocked out of him, one rib broken, and he struggled back to his feet, envious of Naruto's regeneration. Naruto felt a cut form on his cheek and growled under his breath, jerking forward under Itachi's guard and knocking the man back with a hammer strike to the gut. They played a game of whack. Mole for a few seconds, with Naruto barely missing Itachi each time. Itachi swung out with a kick to Naruto's chest, sending him reeling backward and flipping to his feet. Naruto rushed forward again and slammed the hammer down, narrowly missing as Itachi rolled aside. Naruto slammed his hammer down to stop his backward momentum and suddenly realized that his chain was missing, which he could have used at that precise moment. His options were limited at this point. Naruto could hit like a sledgehammer, but if it didn't connect, it was useless. He banked on getting Itachi down again and calculated his action. He'd need all his cunning for this to work. Itachi was better than him with Kenjutsu and was much better at dodging, as were most Genjutsu users. Finally, Naruto got a break when Itachi overextended on a thrust and grabbed the Uchiha's arm, holding him in place. Naruto cocked back his right fist and plowed it into Itachi's face, letting go as he did. Itachi stumbled back and was suddenly stopped. He looked to both sides and his eyes widened. Itachi rushed forward again and started thrusting at Naruto faster and faster, the blonde struggling to block with his heavy weapon. He watched as Naruto held his right arm overhead with his left hand holding it tightly, and a Rasengan formed in his hand, spinning rapidly, with appendages forming from it, giving it the appearance of a shuriken. Itachi gasped when he realized it was the man's renowned Rasen Shuriken. 4 Narutos held his arms and legs out to the side, his fingers held tightly so he could not make signs. Thinking fast, he ordered the Amaterasu to converge on Naruto because he had to do something. Unaware of the darkness encroaching on him, Naruto charged forward, focused only on reaching Itachi and delivering the blow that would end the fight. His hand started to burn with a sharp pain halfway to the Uchiha, and he realized that the Amaterasu was being drawn into the vortex. With only a few feet remaining, he gritted his teeth and pressed on. The cage buncheons were beginning to falter, but held on as long as they could, and when Naruto was 4 feet away from him, Itachi closed his eyes and waited for the inevitable. Itachi watched in shock as Naruto ignored the pain and continued toward him, despite the fact that the man's feathers were starting to burn away and his hand was now a blackened char, but he refused to let go of the jutsu. Naruto screamed as he pushed the Rasen Shuriken home and into Itachi's stomach, experiencing pain unlike anything he had ever experienced before. His entire body felt like it was on fire, and he was. The world then burst into flames. Tenten screamed out Naruto's name, and as soon as the dome dissipated, she was gone, flying to his side, with Kami and Sanosuke right behind her and the Konoha ninjas following. The observers on the wall watched as the flames started to suck inwards and form a dome around the two. As Tenten looked at the bleak battleground, the last of Amaterasu's black flame vanished after scorching the ground, and her hand shot to her mouth. The ground was scorched and would likely never grow anything again, so she stepped carefully through the ashes until she noticed 2 lumps next to each other, one face up and the other face down. She hurried to the lump with wings and began to turn him over. "Avoid touching him." "Why?" her eyes asked as she turned to face Tsunade. "First, let me examine him. He may be alive. Permit me to see him." Tenten nodded, but he would not leave his side. Tsunade ran her green, glowy hand over the boy's body, letting the glow die as tears welled up in her eyes. "He's gone." Jiraiya sat staring at his student with dead eyes, not believing what he was seeing, while Tenten started to sniffle, and as Tsunade put her arms around the girl, those sniffles swiftly turned into enormous sobs. She and Sanosuke stood side by side, Tenten's head trembling as she felt that comforting hand on her head once more and looked up into Kami's eyes. "Oh, pish posh. Tell everyone to back off." After wiping her eyes and ordering everyone to back off, Kami, who was invisible to mortals, knelt next to Naruto and whispered in his ear, her words lost to the world. Sanosuke smiled at Tenten and placed his hand on her shoulder. "Don't be concerned. One of Kami-sama's favorites won't simply go away. Naruto has a duty to perform." "I thought he'd already fulfilled his role." Sanosuke smiled and shook his head. "He has achieved his goal here. But outside of this mortal coil, you two have other responsibilities. And do you really believe that someone like Naruto can be stopped by a little immortal flame?" 1 minute passed, 2 minutes, and Kami's eyebrow arched as she leaned up from whispering in Naruto's ear and stood next to Sanosuke once more, patting Tenten on the shoulder and turning back to watch Naruto. "Naruto Uzumaki. Get up, you lazy ass." Tenten's wings fluttered and he let out a groan as the blackened blonde started to cry joyfully. "All right, I'm awake. Kami-sama, you don't have to shout." With his skin still charred from the Amaterasu, he screamed in agony as Tenten crushed him in her embrace. She gently lowered him back to the ground, and he whimpered before opening his blue eyes and glaring at Kami. "You were unable to take any action?" With their heads swinging, Tsunade and the others glanced from Naruto to Tenten. "To whom are you two speaking?" With a moan, Naruto leaned his head back. "Kami-sama. I'm conversing with Kami-sama. Yash, Naruto-kun. A good night should not be gently enjoyed. It would be a difficult recovery for the blonde." Tenten laughed at Lee's outburst and brushed Naruto's burnt hair out of his face, with some of the follicles falling out. A shaky cough came from behind her. "That was a most interesting counter to my Amaterasu, Naruto-kun." Fearfully, Tenten looked over her shoulder and saw the Mangeku's red eyes staring at her. "Both of us are still alive. This battle is far from over." Tenten's breath caught, and Jiraiya stepped up to her as she watched in horror as Itachi crawled off the ground and stood on wobbly legs. How could he have survived? It shouldn't have been possible, not even for him. "What's wrong, Tenten?" Itachi, he's standing up." Jiraiya blinked, squinting against the sun as she glanced in that direction. "He's simply lying there. No, he is not moving." Tenten got up and pushed Jiraiya away. "No, don't leave, Tenten. He's not moving, he's no longer alive." Her eyes were bright as she turned to face the man. "He then uses genjutsu on you. He wants to keep fighting, so he's moving." There were murmurs that perhaps Tenten's mind had finally broken as the other Konoha ninja looked around, several of them making vain attempts to break the so-called illusion. When a gentle hand touched her shoulder, she turned back to Itachi, sword drawn and prepared to protect Naruto, only to turn her head and see Kami's gentle eyes. "Kami-sama," the woman nodded her head and grinned. 10-10, you can relax. This marks the end of your and Naruto's journey. I'll take care of the rest. The desperate man narrowed his eyes and glanced past her to the blonde on the ground as she strode past the girl and stood in front of Itachi. Go. You are not the object of my argument. I was promised this fight so I could see how strong I am. It hasn't been arrived at yet. Uchiha Itachi, your battle is over. Give it up. Give it all up. You've finished your journey. You've accomplished the best you can. Itachi gestured at the woman with a ferocious shake of his head. No, it's not over yet. I'm still upright. I can hear him breathing, and he hasn't done his job. It's not finished yet. When Kami moved to stand in front of him and placed her hands on his cheeks, Itachi stiffened and froze, unable to bring himself to hit the woman, who gave him a gentle but stern look. It's finished. You both lost. Both of you were unable to defeat Naruto because you were his yin and his yang. Itachi, accept it. At last, you found your match. Pushing past the woman, the Uchiha repositioned his shoulders. I'm not going to take that. I'll never be able to accept that. He shoved her shoulder, pushing her aside, and staggered toward Naruto's prone body when he felt a pull on his heart, and when he looked down, he saw a blue string coming from his chest, and when he turned his head, he saw that the woman was standing with the thread in her hand, pulling on it a little, and each time she did, his heart felt like it was being pulled, like he was on a leash. Observe, Itachi. See the truth by following the thread. His breath caught and his eyes widened exponentially as he followed the thread to her hand and then to his body. How did you accomplish this? He blinked in bewilderment as she kissed his forehead and then slowly raised his face back to its previous level, and a tinkling laugh drifted to his ears as the woman padded up to him once more and cupped his cheeks, bringing his head down to her level. Itachi, I did not do anything. You've been so depressed and alone after fighting for so long. It's finally over, even though your life has been extremely difficult. Itachi, you can relax. Itachi slowly let her guide his vision back to her as he whispered, his voice sounding so small and lost, and he turned to see 10-10 and Sanosuke slowly helping Naruto to his feet, his charred skin slowly healing, his wings already growing new feathers to replace the burnt ones. Who are you? As light started to shine around her, she smiled benevolently at him. Itachi watched in awe before it finally dawned on him. A glowing woman, angels, his body. He started to shake before he dropped out of her grasp and dropped to his knees on the ground. Pardon me, Kami. Sama, I didn't mean to offend. She put her hand on his head and giggled, her bell like laugh swirling in his ears once more as he kept his eyes focused on the grains of sand. This scene now looks a little familiar. When he first met me so long ago, I think a certain blonde did the same thing. Get up, Itachi, because I have to talk to you. Kami's gentle gaze seemed to burn through Itachi, who had been raised to obedience his entire life, and stood at attention. You are such a poor child. One tragedy after another has characterized your entire life. Despite your best efforts to do good, you have consistently fallen victim to one pernicious scheme after another. Itachi, it's admirable that you wanted to do good. Your determination is admirable. Her expression was serious as she turned to face Naruto and 10-10, who were now standing, while the boy wiped the soot from his face and fluttered his wings to get rid of the black dust. Combatants. What color is Itachi's soul, please? Squinting at the astonished man, the angels spoke in unison. Gray. After giving Itachi a single nod, Kami placed her hands on her shoulders. Neither good nor evil. A dilemma. What should I do with him, warriors? Itachi just stared at Naruto, uninterested in what was being said. How does he act as though nothing has occurred? How? Speaking up, Sanosuke had moved to stand by Kami in case Itachi tried anything. Uchiha, he is an angel. Has been for years. Itachi's mouth parted just a little. An angel? Then, he was being honest. Naruto's voice drifted across the clearing, and Sanosuke nodded without further comment. He ought not to end up in hell. However, he shouldn't be allowed to enter heaven. Is there a location where someone can go to make amends for their transgressions? With a slight smile on her face, Kami nodded and closed her eyes. What do you think, 10-10? The girl with the brown hair inhaled deeply and exhaled slowly. Itachi doesn't deserve hell, but he should atone for his transgressions. He has always complied with orders and protected others at the expense of his own family. Kami looked intently into Itachi's eyes and nodded once more. Purgatory, your own purgatory, will be your punishment. Your pride and gluttony will be atoned for. A glut of power and the desire for it. Pride in your name and power. You will bear the weight of your sins, a stone, for your arrogance until I see that you have been pardoned. You must have that sin forgiven before the stone will fall from your back. Your second punishment will result from your gluttony, which is the desire forever. greater power. You will hunger for food and drink in death, just as you did for power in life. Your energy will be depleted by hunger and thirst, which will make it more difficult to bear your sins. The hilly plains and forest will be your purgatory. You will have to cross some streams, but no matter how hunched over you are, you will not drink from them. They will separate their waters from you. There will be an abundance of food in the forests you traverse, but any animal will flee from you, and fruit trees will remove their branches when you are around. She smiled sadly at Itachi, looking directly into his eyes. When you died, you anticipated hell, but you won't get it. After your soul has been redeemed, we will decide how to treat you. Take him, Sanosuke. After giving Itachi a single nod, the man with the brown hair grabbed Itachi's shoulder. Come on. We go to help you get ready for your trials. Kami turned back to Naruto and Tenten and grinned, but Itachi was unable to speak as he started to fade out and disappear. You both performed admirably. Now bid each other farewell. Your stay here is over. The two looked at the idea in disbelief and started to argue, but Kami held up her hand. No, avoid arguing. You've finished your trials here. I need you in my court because you are my warriors. She started to fade, too, and smiled again. In addition, how long have angels existed on Earth? With sorrowful expressions on their faces, Naruto and Tenten slowly turned to face the stunned Konoha ninja. When Tsunade saw their dejected expressions and inquired as to what was wrong, Naruto gave her a small, melancholy smile while tears pricked the corners of his eyes. We've completed our mission. We must depart. Jiraiya appeared next to a startled Tsunade, who had his fist clenched. What does "we have to leave" mean? Tenten lowered her head and let out a sad sigh. Jiraiya, we're not truly alive. Since we turned into angels, we haven't been. We have been surviving on time that Kami-sama has loaned us. We must leave this realm immediately. When their friends finally stood back, Naruto and Tenten wiped their tears and turned to face the people they admired the most. Tsunade and Jiraiya stood, their years of training preventing them from displaying any emotion as the two angels walked forward, holding hands. Their friends were all around them right away, hugging, crying, and begging them not to leave. Tsunade's lip faltered and Jiraiya gave her shoulder a firm squeeze before Naruto spoke, his body still hunched, and they halted just in front of the two older ninja and bowed at their waists. I appreciate everything you have done for me and for us, both of you. All I can do is express my gratitude because I will never be able to pay you back. Ba. Chan, Arrow, Senin. Tenten grinned at the sight and turned to Jiraiya as Tsunade broke and embraced the blonde, her huge mammaries punishing his nose and making it hard for him to breathe. We appreciate all that you have done for us. You helped teach me how to be an effective kunoichi and have kept Naruto alive all this time. I will always be grateful to you. You could let me draw you naked before you leave. Tenten smiled at him after a wing struck him in the head. Even though I hate when you act perverted, I'm going to miss you. Jiraiya gave him a mock glare and pulled him back to his feet while Tenten steered Tsunade away. She hugged the man, reminding him to keep his hands above waist level, and stepped back to assist him in removing Tsunade from Naruto. The boy gasped for air and staggered back, supported by his sensei. I've been trying to get to that spot for years and you accomplish it in 2 seconds, damn brat. Fucking pervert. The two stood looking at each other for a moment, then each of them sniffed and wiped away the one tear in their eyes. I'm going to miss you, you brat, your books still suck. Jiraiya was not known for being touchy-feely or emotional, but on this one rare occasion, he was able to relax and gave Naruto a back pat and a bone-crushing embrace. Agree to show me heaven's beauties when I arrive? Naruto cried and snorted at the same time. If you keep up your lechery, you'll never get there. Tsunade whispered in the girl's ear while holding Tenten close. Take care of him and don't let him get into any trouble. I will. And I won't. Are you going to lead me to Dan and Nawaki when I arrive? If you stop drinking, you'll get to heaven a lot sooner. They stood for a moment before a familiar brown-haired man appeared beside them. The two women laughed and took a step back, looking at each other, before Tenten took a step back beside Naruto and took up his hand. You two, it's time. There's just one more thing to do. You must break your chain, Naruto. It's the thing that keeps you alive. The chain appeared to shudder as it coiled up in front of Naruto, who nodded and gave the order for it to slide off of him and onto the ground. Why am I doing this and how can I destroy it? Go ahead and smash it with your hammer. The reason is that you are connected to Kyuubi through that chain. The Shinigami will take the fox to determine its fate after it has been destroyed. The chain shivered as the hammer came crashing down, the links splintered into tiny pieces and clattered to the ground, and red chakra emerged from the links to form a fox's head in the sky, its dark eyes glaring at everyone with malevolence. Naruto sighed sorrowfully and raised his hammer over his head. Everyone watched as the Kyuubi's head turned in midair and its eyes became fearful, but only Naruto and Tenten could see what made it so frightened. It opened its mouth and roared to the heavens, but then a knife stabbed up through the roof of its mouth, and it fell silent. The Kyuubi whimpered as the horned Shinigami grabbed the knife with one of its pale hands and clamped onto its mouth with the other, then gave a horrid laugh before dragging the Kyuubi away into the abyss, its terrified shrieks of terror fading into the wind. The Shinigami smiled at the Kyuubi and let its long tongue hang out of its mouth as it drove the knife further into the mouth. The two angels waved to them all, and their final words lingered in the air as the Konoha ninja gaped and searched for any sign of the Kyuubi, their weapons drawn, until it was determined that it had vanished, its evil aura gone, and they all turned back to watch Naruto and Tenten fade from existence. You are all loved by us. Goodbye. After many days, Jiraiya stood next to Tsunade at a memorial carved in their likeness. His head hung low, and he couldn't help but feel sad that all his students had died before him. Tsunade stood with her hands clasped in prayer, thanking Jiraiya every day for knowing the two and praying that he would return to his usual cheerful self because, after all, the two were in heaven, next to Kami, and there was no reason to be sad. With another sigh, Jiraiya closed his eyes and felt a warm wind brush against his skin, as if two arms were gently wrapped around his shoulders and a soft voice whispered in his ear. I once assured you that I would let you witness his development into a fine man. You have nothing to mourn because that prayer was answered. He exceeded all of your expectations and developed into a fine man. Man, rejoice because your student is content. Tsunade opened her eyes and began at the wide smile on her friend's face, and Jiraiya grinned and glanced over his shoulder for the voice, but there was nothing there. Jiraiya? With a joyful sigh, he turned to face her. Yes? Are you okay? As he led her back to Konoha, he surprised her by nodding and taking her arm. There has never been a better me. Come, let's grab a drink. I'll just have tea, thanks. He felt the warm wind caress him once more as he closed his eyes. Thank you for everything, whoever you are. A swarm of angels surrounded Naruto and Tenten as they knelt before Kami's throne in heaven, waiting for Kami to speak. The kind woman grinned at her warriors and got up from her throne. Tenten and Naruto, welcome to my court. You are my chosen warriors, my soldiers, and my messengers of divine justice. You are going to bring peace and rid the world of evil. Get up now and go to the court. After standing and facing a sea of angels and spirits who were all applauding their appointment, Naruto and Tenten turned back to Kami and asked where they would begin. Kami smiled and sat back down on her throne. Well, since you are a member of my court, you will assist in bringing harmony to those under my authority. After all, there are other worlds out there besides your own. And where are we going to go first? She buffed her fingernails, the smile threatening to split her face. A location known as Seirei. I think there is a problem involving a traitor that is causing some trouble for those who are under my authority. The two steely hunks appeared to exude joy at the prospect of administering divine justice, and their wings flared behind them as they left the throne room to wild applause. They let twin grins split their faces as they hefted their weapons, crossing them in the air. To Seirei, Kami was about to call the next order of business when a brown and a blonde head appeared around the doorframe, both of them looking very sheepish. Kami watched with pride as they left and the applause subsided, the court returning to its normal state. How can we get to Seirei, I guess? With a sigh, Kami leaned back on her throne, wondering why she had picked those two once more. Ignoring the pain in his stomach, Itachi trudged around the creek, his eyes darting to the two angels who watched to make sure he never veered off course, the massive stone on his back weighing him down so much that his footsteps caused the dust to rise. He took a deep, soothing breath and gritted his teeth, determined not to let anger get the better of him. Anger would only breed wrath, and he didn't need another sin to add to his burden. He walked on, his head bobbing. He needed to find out who was stronger because a draw was unacceptable, so he would atone for his transgressions, pay Kami back, and then settle his score with Naruto. The two angels sighed and trailed behind him, but he was unaware that his load had grown slightly heavier. The atonement would take a long time. The hollows shrieked in triumph and began to bear down on him, and the Shinigami closed his eyes and braced himself for the inevitable as he looked up into the white masks of the two hollows and cringed. He hadn't been ready for this, and now these things were going to kill him. They had already rendered his comrades incapacitated, and he was the only one left. As the hollows vanished, the Shinigami gaped at the two with the weapons, and he opened his eyes just in time to see one hollow's head crushed by a huge warhammer and the other's mask sliced in half by a giant feather. The woman, with her brown hair tied up in buns, was wearing a golden Chinese battle dress that was slit all the way up to her thighs, and her brown, tipped wings were fluttering behind her, the sword in her hands seeming to hum in happiness along with the hammer. The man with the hammer was a blonde, wearing a white shirt with the back cut out to accommodate his large white wings. The blonde man turned to face the Shinigami, smiling as he cheerfully waved one hand while shouldering the enormous block of steel. "Hey, Seirei asked us to be the backup. Yamamoto, who the hell is he?" With a nod, the woman swung the feather to rest behind her head, pushing her chest forward as her arms rested on top of it. "Are you eating anything, too? It's really exhausting to travel dimensions." With a sigh, Naruto wrapped an arm around Tenten's shoulders as the Shinigami stared and passed out. "Well, whatever. For him, our awesomeness was too much. We must now wait for him to awaken." Tenten put an arm around his waist and rolled her eyes, knowing that with him at her side, eternity would never be dull. Eternity used to sound so vast and menacing, but now she looked forward to it. She grinned as Naruto used his foot to push the fallen Shinigami. How eagerly she anticipated it.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.